Okay, I'm ready.
Good evening. We'll now call to order the Reno City Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, November 17th. And if we could start the night by having Commissioner Armstrong lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong. Michelle, can you do a roll call, please?
Hang on just a second. My computer's freezing. Just give me a minute. Roll call. Sorry. JD Draculich.
Here.
Harris Armstrong.
Here.
Peter Gower.
Here.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Arthur Munoz.
Here.
Sylvia Villanueva. Alex Felto.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We'll now move to agenda item number 3, which is public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. We'll now open up public comment. Do we have any request to speak forms?
So before we start general public comment, let me read this into the record. It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, we did receive general public comment. It was just correspondence not relating to anything that was on the agenda. That was forwarded to the Planning Commission and has been entered as part of the record. No voicemails were received, and I did not receive any request to speak forms for this item.
Great, thank you. We'll now move to the public hearing section, agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4.1, which is case number LDC 23-00018. Spire at North Hills has been pulled, which means we won't be hearing the item tonight. However, there may be people here who want to speak during public comment, so we're going to open up public comment on this agenda item. Are there any requests to speak forms for agenda item 4.1?
Okay, so we did receive correspondence on this item. There were voicemails received. We'll play those for you. I did not receive any request to speak forms for this item at this time.
Hello, my name's Luis Mike De Anda. I'm in the Golden Valley, Lemon Valley area. You guys are trying to build apartments by Burger King, I believe, in the Golden Valley area. We're already congested. We already have enough traffic. Just please stop building more apartments. It's getting congested. There's a lot of accidents. Just please stop building more apartment buildings in the Golden Valley, Lemon Valley area. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, my name is Veronica Rivera, and I'm calling in regards to project LDC 23-00018. Aspire at North Hills, and it's a 204 unit multifamily residential development that I am opposing to because we have a lot of traffic here in Golden Valley already, and our elementary school is overpopulated. So I completely oppose to these apartments being built in this neighborhood. If you have any questions, please reach me at 775-409-2956. Thank you.
Hello, I am Susan Holt, and I believe the project number is LDC 23-00018, Aspire at North Hills. Please, please do not build the 204 unit apartment complex or homes in that area. We are too crowded out here in the north. Please, please don't build it. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Richard Williams. I live in the North Valleys, and I'm calling to request that you folks do not approve the 204 unit apartment complex on North Hills and East Golden Valley Road. There is absolutely no way on the face of this planet that this area can handle that much more traffic on 395 North, and there's no way. There's no way. Okay, that's my public opinion. Thank you.
That's it for voicemails on this item.
Do you know if there's anyone on Zoom who intends to speak on this item? Okay. In that case, we'll close. Would anyone in the public like to be heard on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we'll close agenda item 4.1.
Actually, sorry, can I get in here real quick before we close that?
Sure, please.
I just want to ask, and I don't know if this is possible, Jason, or not, but when this comes back up and it's brought back before us, can we have these replayed at that time? Is that something we can do?
It will be included as part of the record. We can see about doing that, including that at the next, when this is next heard. Right now, it's a to-be-determined date, but we're anticipating the end of December. There will be additional noticing or re-noticing with this item, so just for the record.
And these have been entered as part of the record, so with this meeting tonight.
Yeah,
as well.
I totally understand, and I understand where we're coming from, but I want, when this comes back up, I want the full gamut of everything that is being addressed here on both opposition and for. So I just want to make sure that this is redone again. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move to agenda item 4.2, which is case number LDC 23-00019, Mount Bismarck Single Family. We have a presentation from the applicant.
Thank you, Chair Velto, John Krompottek, excuse me, representing the applicant. He is with me this evening. That is Tim Wilkins. He's the owner developer. I understand several of you met with him. He knows his product better than anybody. So if there's anything along those lines from the commission, I would appreciate. We'll direct him to Mr. Wilkins. So this is a 74-lot attached, single-family attached project in the NC zone on bound by Mount Anderson, Mount Babcock, and Mount Bismarck. Includes a conditional use permit for more than 50 units in this particular zone. There's the NC zone to give you some perspective around MF14 along the east side, public facility, which is a charter school adjacent on the north, and then industrial zoning to the west and south. This zone does allow 30 dwellings per acre. This particular project, single family attached, proposed at 9.1 dwellings per acre. Here's some of the features that we've discussed amongst the team. This designer, in my opinion, the first time I ever heard about him, I've known him for 20 years from Minneapolis. Adam Harrison, his father is Rick Harrison. He writes book on site design all over the country. And they prepared the plan. I think it's a very well done plan with this particular product that has some features that are quite notable. There's a lot of open space. You can see that on the plan. The parking is 2 per unit where code requires 1 per unit, plus the pocket parking for 16 spaces within that are spattered without the neighborhood. Site amenities, daycare, courts, kids play area, dog park up there in the northwest that doubles with the detention area, and a clubhouse, fire pit, and spa for a 74 lot deal. I think they did a fine job in amenitizing this project. One of the things that Mr. Wilkins has mentioned in this, that he's found a way to deliver pricing such that it's workforce housing. This is for, this is going to be owned and operated by his operation, targeting workforce housing. And then you notice too, in surrounding employment and schools within walking distance. To the north, we show, actually, let me go back here. You see the charter school immediately to the north, Desert Heights Elementary further up on Mount Bismarck, and you know, the Dorothy McLendon Park a quarter mile away over on Stead Boulevard. There's a little bit about the product. 74 lots, 3 floor plans, square footage 882 to 954, all 2 and 3 bedroom. And then we touched on parking already. There's an elevation, and you can sort of see the attachment between the 2 units there. A little bit about the features and the single family units. They're fabricated off site, then built onto foundation on the project site. A storage room connects the units on the attached side, thus single family attached. Some of the features: 10-foot ceilings at the center, granite counters, stainless steel appliances, washer and dryer in each unit, simulated hardwood floors. You guys get it. It's fairly well amenitized. Energy Star rated, I think, is notable as well. And then also they're trying to promote community in the last bullet point. They have a social committee and do some events for the neighborhood, like the 4th of July party, Christmas celebration, and others. So I believe that's all I have. There's Mr. Wilkins, I note, Adam Harrison, Mark Chappelle, landscape architect, and myself. And I would be glad to take any questions the commission might have. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, John. Grace, we have a presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Grace Macadin, Associate Planner for the record. John did a great job of giving an overview of the project. I'll just go over staff's analysis, and then I will conclude with a recommendation. So the 8.1 acre site is located north of the intersection of Mount Anderson and Mount Babcock, northwest of Mayors Park, and south of Desert Heights Elementary School and Sierra Nevada High School. So here's a closer look at the site where you can start to see the characteristics of the surrounding area. The applicant is requesting the approval of a tentative map to develop 74 single-family attached lots and a conditional use permit to allow for over 50 lots in the neighborhood commercial zone. So the key issues that were associated with this request were overall site design and compatibility. So surrounding the site, as John was saying, is MF14 to the east. This is attached single family as well, more duplex types dwellings. And then industrial to the west and north of the site. So this could serve as some sort of workforce housing for those surrounding developments. The project will also have 5-foot wide parkway strips to help buffer the proposed residences from the neighboring industrial. And then there's some anticipated recreational areas throughout the site that will provide the residents with some on-site amenities. So here's the proposed site plan where you can see that there will be access from Mount Babcock and Mount Anderson Street. You can also see there is sidewalk throughout the site to provide pedestrian connectivity. So based on the size of the site, the density would yield a total of 9.16 dwelling units per acre, which is well under that 30 units per acre. So I think this Google Street View kind of demonstrates the characteristics of the neighborhood. You can see that industrial on the west and then the single family attached on the east. And then you would have those 5 foot wide landscape buffers as well as the sidewalks. So the applicant proposed an additional condition that was not included in the staff report. And then I was talking to John right before this. We might want to make a small amendment to this as well. Instead of the sidewalk extending to Mount Anderson, we would have it extend to Mount Bismarck, so that that sidewalk, they wouldn't have to walk through Mount Anderson, which is typically a busier street. So I apologize for the confusion, but if the commission would like to include that, we would just ask you include it in your motion. And staff is comfortable with that condition. We think it includes or adds to the pedestrian safety. So here are the findings for a conditional use permit. The project is consistent with code and compatible with the area. Here are the findings for a tentative map. Staff believes all findings can be met and recommends approval. The recommended motion is on your screen, and I am available for questions.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now come back to the commission for disclosures. Start with Commissioner Gower.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am familiar with the site and met with the applicant's representative and the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Munoz, I am familiar with the site and I spoke with a representative.
Commissioner Armstrong, I haven't physically been to the site, but I have spoken with the applicant.
Commissioner Draculich, I'm familiar with the site and have spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Villanueva, no disclosures.
Commissioner Johnson, I visited the site and spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Velto, familiar with the site and spoke with the applicant's representative. We'll now move to public comment. We'll open up public comment. Do we have any?
I did not receive correspondence for this item. No voicemails were received, and I have not received any request to speak forms.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone in the public like to speak on this item?
And no Zoom.
No Zoom. Perfect. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Come back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Munoz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is going to be for probably Mike for traffic in the area, if he's available.
Yes, Mike is available.
Hey, Mike, thank you. Some concerns with the area from being familiar with the area and having kids that go to the school at the end of the street there at O'Brien. What are the potential impacts, or what do they expect is going to be the impacts when this goes in? I know now to get from approximately where JCPenney is down to the freeway is about 15 to 20 minutes in the afternoon. Is this going to have a significant impact on that?
It is not going to have a significant impact. In fact, this doesn't this doesn't even require a traffic impact study. It should have a nominal impact. Although you're right, it will increase traffic, but it's expected to be nominal.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Grace, question for you. So this is a residentially planned unit in the NC zone as opposed to being in a residentially zoned area, which I understand and I don't have a problem with that. I guess the question that I have is, are there any differences with respect to residential adjacency standards between if this was, say, a multifamily zone site and we were proposing this, would there be any difference with respect to the setbacks from the industrial zoning across both of the adjacent streets?
Yeah, it's interesting the way that it's referenced in code is non-residential development adjacent to residentially zoned development typically. And so that's why, since that industrial is existing, we took a look at how they can do things that are above and beyond, since that's not really built into code. So they have that parkway strip that could be typically waived in other circumstances, especially in a mixed-use zone. And then we tried to orient most of those homes kind of further from the industrial areas because that's not built in like we would see in some of those residential zones.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the follow-up to that is the one, two of the sites across the street are developed, but the third, I think we saw a few months ago, was actually being rezoned for new development on it. This isn't a residentially zoned property, but the one across Mount Anderson is. So any kind of requirements on the development for that site, that would trigger setbacks based on the adjacent properties rather than this property. Is that
Correct. So screening, setbacks, step-backs, and height would all be triggered at that point.
Okay, so we're basically, because most of what's there is already there, we're meeting the standards as opposed to if we had to look at this as the first one going in.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Grace, a couple questions. First, related to parking. Can you just clarify what the proposed parking is and compare that to what city staff was looking for parking requirement?
Yeah, so the parking, as John had mentioned, is 2 per unit. Typically in code, it depends on your location in relation to downtown. So it would be around 1 per unit typically, not to exceed 2 per unit. So, and then they also have the 16 guest parking, I guess you could call it. So at that point, they would be above code standards.
Okay, thank you. Second question is related to that condition, proposed added condition. Can we put the site plan up and just, could you indicate where that would be?
So you can't see it. Let me see if this mouse will work. This is the 2 lots that we're referring to. So that directly goes to Mount Anderson Street, which is right here. If we were to word the condition to go straight to Bismarck, I think it is, then they would wrap around and connect to the sidewalk more north than just going a straight shot.
Okay,
So we could finesse that a little bit.
great. Thank you for that clarification. All I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about, it says here that it's.
Sylvia, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Sure. Can you talk a little bit about the, it says it's located in the Silver Lake watershed, which is a closed basin, and the final design will incorporate measures to ensure that there's no net increase in the regulatory 100-year water surface elevation. Is there any risk of flooding or anything like that?
So I'll defer to Mike on that one. I know that code has some standards to help mitigate that, but if Mike's available, I'd defer to him.
Yeah, Mike Michelle for the record. Yeah, this is an enclosed basin, and by code, they're required to mitigate to 1.3 to 1 mitigation, and they are proposing to do that. There is no risk to downstream flooding as a result of this project. In fact, it does nothing but make flooding concerns downstream better.
Can you give me an example of mitigation?
Mitigation you see is in the upper left corner where they have a retention basin. That retention basin is sized to accommodate 30% more volume than what was previously generated on this site before it's developed.
And that's with regard to like 100-year, I mean, for example, if we're seeing 100-year floods, that would address that concern.
5-year and 100-year, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Or motions? Mr. Gower?
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
In the case number LDC 23-00019 Mount Bismarck Single Family based upon compliance with the applicable findings. I move to approve the tentative map and conditional use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report with the addition of a condition that requires pedestrian connectivity from the site to Mount Bismarck Street.
Great, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Draculich, I'll second.
All those in favor, say
Sorry,
aye.
sorry, Chair, if I can make a comment before we go to a vote.
Yes.
I know we tend to a lot of times have to put the cart before the horse here, and we really want, or we really need the housing to come in before everything else catches up. And unfortunately, I think we've gotten so far ahead of ourselves in the North Valley with building and adding more people, more traffic. The area can no longer handle any more of these projects at this point until everything else catches up. So with that being said, although I think this is a great project, I think it's a great product, I cannot burden the North Valleys with more traffic, more burden, more congestion. And so for that reason, I'll be voting no. So I just want that for the record.
Thank you.
You want to do a roll call vote then?
Please.
Okay. Belto,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Draculich,
Yes.
Gower,
Yes.
Munoz,
No.
Villanueva,
Yes.
Armstrong.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you. Good luck with your project. We'll now move to agenda item 4.3, which is case number LDC 23-00002. We have a presentation from the applicant.
Okay, good evening. My name is Eric Hasty. I'm with Wood Rogers, and I'm representing the applicant who is here with me today. He is also the owner of 1045 Hogue Road, and tonight we're requesting a master plan and zoning map amendment. So the project is located off at the end of Hogue Road. This is up off of north of Parr and North Virginia Street. This is about a 3-acre site. It's within Washoe County currently. It's pending an annexation that will go to City Council in December, tentatively scheduled. And so this request is pending that approval. So some of the things that I just want to go over that are relevant to this request tonight. This is a zoomed in version of the actual site. There is a single family home on site that's highlighted there in red. And there is a private drive that is accessed from the southwest. This is a shared private drive with some of the other homeowners in the area. None of this will change with this request. There is also the things that are highlighted in yellow are access easements that are existing for site access and utilities. And then there is highlighted in blue there a City of Reno right-of-way that comes right up to the southeast corner of the property. And then those parcels that are highlighted in green are U.S. Forest Service properties. So as I said, this is in the City of Reno sphere of influence. You can see it highlighted there in the white hatch. That's the property itself. The whole eastern boundary is shared with the City of Reno. So everything in yellow is City of Reno, and then everything in purple is within the City of Reno sphere of influence. So the current master plan is unincorporated transition, and this is because it's in the sphere of influence. And then there is no zoning associated with this, but upon annexation, it will have a zoning designation of UT5, which is a minimum of 5 acres. And so this will be a non-conforming use because it is a 3-acre parcel. So the two requests we're asking for tonight are a master plan amendment from unincorporated transition to single-family residential, and a zone change from UT5 to SF3, which is single-family residential, 3 dwelling units per acre. Again, this is contingent upon the annexation, but in a nutshell, these two graphics up here highlight what this will achieve. There is nothing that will be changed about the physical properties of the property itself. So looking at the proposed master plan, we determined that single-family neighborhood is appropriate as this is a continuation of what is already in the city to the east. And if you read the description in the Reimagine Reno master plan, typically between 2 and 8 units per acre, and it's primarily single-family detached homes, which is representative of the area to the east in the city of Reno. Some other findings that we have to make with the master plan designation is the logical extension of existing utilities. So there is existing utilities within the right-of-way that I mentioned on the southeast corner. It's approximately 350 feet to the east, and so those can be extended up into that right-of-way and into the site. This is also in conformance with the surrounding master plan designation to the east, and when you're looking at the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan, this is designated as Tier 2 land, and the just description that is in there is representative of the area and is a candidate for intensification. So the proposed zoning, getting into some of those details, is SF3, single family residential, 3 dwelling units per acre. Again, this is in conformance with all the other properties to the east. It's an extension of all those uses. Pretty much everything that's along Hogue Road that is in the city of Reno until you get to Virginia Street is zoned SF3. So this mainly allows single family detached. Anything else will usually have to go through some type of conditional use permit. Theoretically, we are allowed a maximum of 9 units per acre because the size of the parcel, 3 acres. However, with a minimum of 15,000 square feet, it comes hard when you have to dedicate portions of that to right-of-way to access those lots. So theoretically, you probably couldn't get 9 units on here. I also want to point out that in the future, if this goes to any type of subdivision, anything that's under 4 lots, so an additional 3 lots, will have to go through the parcel map process, which will go through the city of Reno, and they will review that at that time. And then anything over that, so 5 to 9 parcels, will have to go through a tentative map process, and that will have to be voted on by the Planning Commission. Here's just looking at some of the characteristics that are associated with the setbacks of 30 feet on the front and rear and 5 feet on the side. These are typical of what you see in this area for most of the existing homes in the city of Reno along Hogue Road. We did have a public meeting as required by NRS. Applicant hosted public meeting. We tried to go to the NAB. Unfortunately, there was a noticing error. We did go to the NAB to make public comment to invite all of the board members as well as anybody in the public to our applicant-hosted virtual meeting. Notices were also sent out. Those notices were, the list was given to us from the city of Reno. We mailed those out. We had 4 attendees, and some of their concerns were not so much anything that to do with the master plan and the zoning designation itself. A lot of things we heard were the concerns about future development, site access, utility extension, as well as the existing conditions of Hogue Road. Again, we are asking for a master plan amendment and zone change. The city of Reno staff has agreed and is recommending approval. This is in conformance with the master plan as well as the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. And the zoning is in conformance with the master plan and helps bring this into further conformance. I'm here to answer any questions that you guys have, so thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation, Grace?
Yes, I'm back. All right, good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Grace Macadin, Associate Planner for the record, here to discuss 1045 Hogue Road Master Plan and Zoning Map Amendments. So the subject site is 3 acres in size and located northwest of Hogue Road, about 670 feet west of its intersection with Mason Road, west of Old Virginia. So here is a closer view of the site where you can see that dashed blue line on your screen. This line represents city limits. The subject site is within the city's sphere of influence, as Eric had mentioned, and the annexation request was submitted concurrently with this application, and that's scheduled to be heard by City Council in December. So the request before you today is a master plan amendment from unincorporated transition to single family and a zoning map amendment from unincorporated transition 5 acre minimum to single family 3 units per acre. Key issues associated with this request were compatibility, conformance with the master plan, and availability of public services and infrastructure. Surrounding the site consists of SF3 to the east, so it does extend past your the cutoff of the picture there. Public land to the north, county land within the sphere of influence to the south and west of the site. So the county land that is south and east of the site would also translate to UT and UT5. So although these properties would translate to UT5, they would be considered non-conforming since the lots are smaller than 5 acres. So this requires any intensification to go through a zoning map amendment. The proposed SF3 has a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet, but a public hearing would be required for the division of anything more than 4 lots. Additionally, at the time of development, the applicant would be required to bring in and improve any necessary infrastructure to city standards. So this includes water, sewer, roadways, etc. The applicant is also requesting a master plan amendment from UT to SF, since SF3 is not conforming to that UT master plan designation. So city records indicate that the UT master plan designation was given to the site during the Reimagine Reno master plan process in 2017. So prior to this process, the site and surrounding areas had a master plan designation of single family residential, and that was our previous master plan. So here is a comparison of standards for UT5 and SF3. The biggest change or the biggest difference we see here is the lot size minimum. So as mentioned before, any creation of more than 4 lots would require a tentative map, which requires a public hearing. Here are the findings for a zoning map amendment. The project does not conflict with state law, and it conforms to a number of master plan policies. And then here are the findings for a master plan amendment. Staff believes all findings can be met and recommends approval of the master plan and zoning map amendments. The recommended motion is on your screen, and I am available for questions.
Thank you. Back to the commission for disclosures. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Johnson, I spoke with the applicant's representative and received and read several emails on this project.
Commissioner Villanueva, no disclosures.
Commissioner Draculich met with the applicant's representative and read and received emails.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Armstrong, no disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the area, and I spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Gower, I coordinated briefly with the applicant's representative and received and read emails.
Commissioner Velto, familiar with the site, spoke with the applicant's representatives and received and read emails. We'll now move on to open public comment. I have multiple requests to speak forms. Start with Gabriel Burke. I understand that you do not wish to speak.
I put down both. I wasn't sure if I was going to, if what I was.
Oh, would you like to
might
speak?
be said by someone else, but I can speak if it's all right.
Please, the mic is yours. You have 3 minutes for your comments.
Thank you. Very simple. I mean,
Could you please state your name for the record, please? Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gabriel Burke, resident and owner of 1335 Hogue Road. 3 parcels to the west of 1045. Shared driveway. Sorry. I think we all appreciate what it is up there as far as an interface between the city and the Forest Service lands that are all around there, including the park access that you get to through the Upper Keystone Canyon Trailhead. And I think we all live there in general because we like relative space and not a ton of people. So I don't know, I guess we just, on principle, tend to oppose a lot of those proposals that would change any of that. I know some of them are inevitable, but I do wish that there was some difference between what we have and literally giving people the opportunity to increase that by 9, which is, I mean, we heard about, you know, what necessitates a traffic study, but when you start splitting things up with the potential of, you know, almost 10 times the capacity for what we already have, I anticipate problems, traffic, just access for everybody, problems in the winter when it's already a difficult and non-conforming road. And I'm sure other people will have other things to say, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Mathers. If you could start by stating your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name's Steve Mathers. I'm here representing myself as a concerned citizen, and I know a few of the neighbors, and I hope I can express some of their views. Regarding the proposed master plan amendment and annexation of 1045 Hogue Road, the urban interface where the city meets the country and the country meets the Forest Service lands has a total combined area up there of only 32 acres. So we're not talking about a big bonus for the city to be able to develop that to the point where there's really much income there. The costs for turning that road into a paved road that has city streets and access, I'm told, is in the many, many millions of dollars. I would suggest that these 12 large lots would much better serve as an interface with the thousands of acres, if not hundreds and hundreds of square miles of Forest Service land and wilds lands, rather than small city developed parcels of a third of an acre each. But at a third of an acre each, there's very little room for both wildlife and to flourish, where they do on these large lots, including things as rabbits, deer, a large pack of coyotes, family of bobcats, birds included, both protected species and non-protected species that live in these lots. Just on the one lot to the west, there's 200 to 300 birds that flock overnight to just a very few trees, and some of these birds are protected, some are not. I would say that turning this project to 9 small third-acre lots creates an island all into itself. There's a ridge of high, very hard bedrock just to the east of this proposed property. And I'd like to point out that those few lots that are to the east, 2 of them are just under a half acre, one's probably 1.5 acres, and one's probably, I'm gonna guess, 2.5 to 3 acres. There's other smaller lots down the street. I think that was probably a pretty good zoning decision as the city worked up into this area and then built even larger lots or designated larger lots behind that. I would think that those larger lots give both wildlife and people access to the wildlands without the fences and attitudes of people who want a 3rd-acre lot. The first time somebody's cat gets killed up there by this pack of coyotes, they're going to go out and start shooting up the coyotes. And we've seen it many times before. And in the past, it's been difficult to keep people from shooting animals up there, even though they're not living in that particular area. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your comments.
All right, thank you.
Randy Mendez Para.
Hi, my name is Randy, and I am a neighbor. So I have some concerns. So first off, I want to just preface it by saying, as a longtime real estate agent and broker, I understand the need and the importance for development. I'm also extremely empathetic to the fact we have a housing shortage, so I understand that firsthand. The issue I have here is safety and the infrastructure. So you guys, we have a lot of things that are being developed up there, and here's one of my biggest concerns, this road. So first off, there is not a road maintenance agreement. Okay, so I don't even know who is responsible for the road. Thankfully, my neighbor Vince makes sure he takes care of it. But if he goes away, I don't know what happens. My own child has slid off this road. This road is not meant for this type of travel, and we already have a massive influx of traffic that doesn't live there. So we have people using the trails, we have people training, we have all of these people coming in that we already cannot control. And if we develop this, then we're gonna have further traffic that we cannot control. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the entire safety of the development. So we have children that don't have sidewalks. We don't have street lights. So my children, my grandchildren, are already not safe due to the traffic we can't control, and now we're proposing putting additional traffic. So in the theory of them just getting to walk to my mom's house down the street and be safe in a residential environment, that's gone. If we all remember the situation in Sun Valley with the lack of sidewalks where we lost a child's life, these are the kind of things that we don't have. So I have a lot of questions because, again, I am an investor myself, and I stand behind that. But what are we doing for safety here? Also, I watched a previous city council meeting where another development was coming in, and a topic that came up was the radon. Well, I personally have a child in remission, and I had radon tests done, and we already have an increased level of radon in our area. So I want to know that before we start digging, what safety do I have as a mother in this community to know that my child's air quality is going to continue to be protected? So I just think that there needs to be a lot of due diligence here, because this is not an area, this is a very unique area that is not equipped to become a subdivision. It does not have the infrastructure. So I mean, those are just some of my basic concerns. Again, to echo what some of my neighbors have already said, we have the wildlife, also shooting in general. So just so that we're aware, I just left my house last week and was stopped by the sheriffs right at the same spot asking, did I know who was shooting? So we have other issues that need to be tackled before we could even look at possibly developing this. Like, we are dealing with people shooting in our mountains, we're dealing with people ruining our roads, and I believe that we need to think first and foremost of those of us that already exist there before we begin to develop it and bring more people in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lloyd Kreitz.
Good evening. I live at 1050 Hogue Road. My wife has been up at that property since 1970.
Could you state your name, please?
And one of the things that was brought up was
Sir,
the right-of-way.
Sorry, sir, could you please state your name?
Oh, Lloyd Kreitz. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was the right-of-way. I have a document here in 2015, the previous owner at 1045. We agreed a one-time easement for an electrical power to be brought up 350 feet down below Hogue Road where the electrical ends at city property. And they brought it up around a huge rock pile. And I talked to MB Energy. Her name is Laura Sheeline, and it was for a 300 amp circuit that the previous homeowner needed for their, they were reconstructing the home. So as far as a right-of-way on our property around that rock pile, that easement is probably 80 to 100 feet from our property line on the north and on the east side of our property. So that's one issue. The other thing is we talk about the degree of the road exceeds the 10% or the 10 degree or less for a development to be brought up in that particular area. Since I've lived there for 16 years, being married to my wife, we have witnessed excessive amount of traffic. It is unbelievable. I wish each and every one of you could come up there during the summer and on the weekends and watch the traffic. We put up a perimeter fence, probably 13, 14 years ago, after I witnessed somebody driving across our property and destroyed our septic tank. So since we put up the perimeter fence, our property has been hit 4 individual times, causing damage because of the excessive speed. On any given day during the summer, we have search and rescue coming up. We have bicycle groups that exceed 100 people at a time. We have the ROTC that can exceed 40 vehicles at a time. Plus, we have all the other individuals that are coming up. This particular area cannot handle any more traffic. This is such a small request for 4, 6 homes, whatever you want to say, on one particular property, and it is a safety issue for every one of us up here. Like the previous speaker, she said, we are all concerned about people up there walking their dogs, walking for the benefits of being in a national forest area. And I would request that the commission does not approve this. All the homeowners are here tonight, and we do not want to see this because we can't handle any more traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
No, we don't. And we did receive correspondence that was forwarded to the Planning Commission and has been entered in the record, and no voicemails were received for this item.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else in the public like to speak on this item? Yes, sir.
Sir, when you're done speaking, could you please fill out a comment card? Oh, thank you.
And if you could just state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Richard Wharton, and I'm the owner and resident at 805 Hogue Road. I've lived here since May of 2019, and I just want the city to know that we specifically moved to that residence for the purposes of the outdoor recreation that was available. We specifically moved there. I'm a professional cycling coach. I've been a cycling coach for 30 years, and we literally found it on Realtor.com, and 9 days later we bought the house. So we are some of the most enthusiastic supporters of the Hogue Road community. We know our neighbors. They're sitting next to me. And what we've seen is what they are describing. Increased traffic, increased scofflaw behavior, conflicts with wildlife. And to be honest, the proposal is really jackknifing around on a bunch of 90-degree turns, backing up to public land for ostensibly, I'm going to say it, selfish reasons. But the land is already here, and the neighbors, we've built this community, this little pocket community up on the plateau at 5,500 feet. And I'll just be honest, I think that the proposal needs to be tabled and refused, because you're going to spend a lot of money once to build the roads. You're going to spend a lot of money once to build the extra easements and widths and ADA compliance and all that other stuff. You're going to be paying for that. We are going to be paying for that into perpetuity. And that is not the wisest use of the city or the county's money. And I urge you to put that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Tracy Candela, and my husband and I own 630 Hogue Road. We're further down. We are in the city limits. And we've lived there since 2007. One thing that hasn't really been addressed here is, well, safety, yes, traffic and all that, fire issues. We have had wildfires up there. We did have a house, not myself, but there was a house that was destroyed by fire many years ago. The closest fire hydrant to that site is 670 feet. That's when the house was destroyed, the firefighters that came up, none of their hoses would reach. Their water trucks couldn't get up the hill because it's so steep. And at the time, the weather conditions didn't permit that. So, you know, you get to a lot of people up there, and there is a lot of people up there. I'm a morning hiker. I was up there at 6 o'clock this morning hiking, 24 degrees. But, you know, there, you know, I think of Paradise. I think of Paradise, California. You get too many people up there, there's only one way on, one way out. And if there's an emergency situation, which we did have a wildfire in about June of 20, the trucks are going up there, but there's not enough room for that road for people to evacuate and the first responders coming up. It's just not practical to have that many people living up there with, you know, fire issues. Thank you.
Thank you. You have Cynthia Zedeville. I apologize if I mispronounced your last name.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Fednick. I live at 1075 Hogue Road, which borders the stated property immediately. I'd like to know if you all got my email response, which was a few pages. Yes, no, yes, good. Perfect. I would like to remind you that the grade of the road is 14%. I hope you looked at the pictures I enclosed with that. Did you? Good. That was a crazy, crazy accident. 5 cars were totaled out that night, including mine. And because it happened because one person didn't know how to drive. The rest of us that have lived up there for multiple years know not to leave our cars on the road. We know to get them out of the way. That accident happened because someone left their car on the road, parallel. Really not very smart. So speed, the safety and the speed, the grade of Hogue Road, as someone mentioned, we have a bazillion cars up there. Bicycles, you think bicycles ride in a straight line up Hogue Road? No, they do not. Have you ever tried to ride a bicycle up there? Probably not. Use zigzag. If you're walking up that hill, it takes you a while. That hill is steep. It's dangerous. There's not side. There's no room. It's a skinny little street. His property borders in 2 sides by Forest Service. Somehow that's been left off of everybody's notes. Right immediately in front of his property is Forest Service, and it's rocks, big, huge boulders. If I wanted to go play on those rocks, I can, and there's not a thing he could do about it. Anybody, the whole city can come and play on those rocks. It's right directly in front of his house. Also to the north is Forest Service. And every other way in is private property. The Hogue Road is private property from Reno city limits all the way around to his 1045. So that has to be dealt with. I would think that the right thing to do is to say no. This is, as other people mentioned, Forest Service. It's a very unique area up there. If you haven't been, go up there and check us out. It's beautiful. Everyone loves it up there. We don't need more traffic. We don't need the accidents, fatalities. You're opening the door to fatalities. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more requests to speak forms. Oh, one more.
Could you please complete a comment card before you
I
leave?
put one in there.
You did? Because I
Yeah,
don't
I
have
did.
it.
Vince
Go ahead.
Wiltowski.
Go ahead.
Name's Vince Wiltowski. I live at 5267 Hogue. And before you guys make any kind of decision, I think that you ought to take and drive up there when it snows and see what you think. That'll tell you what goes on up there. I take and clear the road most of the time when it snows, and we get 4 and 5, 6 foot drifts in there, and it's unpassable. So before you make a decision, take a ride up there when it snows. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have a request to speak form? You do? Okay, great.
Yeah, I did. I found it.
Any other members of the public that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comments. Come back to the commission for questions.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Commissioner Draculich, question for the applicant's representative. Just in reading the staff report, it looked like, I guess I just want some more clarity in regards to that Ward 4 NAB. It looks like you guys didn't get on the agenda and it was not scheduled in time, but then you guys did try to make up for it with a separate neighborhood meeting. How did that meeting go? Did you guys have that meeting? Did you get to hear the concerns of the neighbors? What have you guys done since you've heard that?
Yeah, thank you, Eric Hasty, for the record. Yeah, so we did have that meeting. Again, we went to the NAB to give public comment. We invited anybody in the public that was there, as well as the NAB members to attend. And then we mailed out notices to all the surrounding neighbors to attend. And so we had 4 members of the public show up. And I went over exactly what we were proposed tonight. And then we heard their comments and concerns. And a lot of the comments and concerns, and the ones I'm hearing tonight too, are all about infrastructure and the existing conditions up there, right? And I just want to remind everybody that this is the first step in the process in order for us to address those, because we can't come forward with any project, with any proposal about where that access is going to be and how it's going to look, and it will have to be designed to the City of Reno standards once we do that. But we can't do that process until we get through this. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I actually have a follow-up question on that, if I may. So it seems like a lot of the concerns from the public have to do with issues with how this could potentially be developed were you to put in 9 units, 7 units, or whatnot. What kind of steps come after this in the event that you decide to proceed forward with trying to build homes? What assures the public that there will be input?
So if we have to go to tentative map, which it's a public process, and that's for five lots or more, right? So then we will actually have a project. You will be able to see what those lots look like, exactly what that infrastructure looks like, where it's going to be proposed, and then we will have to come to the Planning Commission. And it'll be reviewed by city staff as well, all the engineers and everything, to make sure that it's designed to their standards. And then they will have a chance to comment on that again during that time.
So is it your impression that things like fire and traffic safety, all of that could be addressed?
Absolutely, yeah. All the agencies, all those City of Reno agencies will be reviewing that. They will be making sure that they meet all of the requirements, just like the exact development that is along Hogue Road right now. So,
Great, thank you. Commissioner Villanueva?
Thank you. This question is for Grace, for the planner. Grace, where within the sphere of influence does this project fall?
Sure. So I'll actually pull up a graphic. Oh, sorry. So city limits are directly to the east, and then the sphere of influence extends west. So you can see that blue dashed line is the actual city limits. And then to the west of the site is the sphere of influence. So this abuts city limits.
Oh, okay, so it's not at all within the sphere of influence.
No, it is. So the sphere of influence is separate from actual city limits. So the sphere of influence is, and I guess I should have gone over that, so thank you for the question. Sphere of influence is outside city limits, but it's identified as intended to be annexed within the next 20 years.
So I have this chart that I'm looking at. It says regional center, commercial neighborhood center, corridor, employment area, neighborhood. Which one of those does it fall within?
Oh, are you referring to
The master plan.
The structure plan?
It is, yes, it is, yep.
So the structure plan for this particular one is in the foothill neighborhoods of the structure plan. So that's identified as obviously areas with some natural resources, more significant slopes and stuff like that.
Does this area have any slopes?
Yes. So the on the southeast portion, there is a significant rock outcropping, and those are fairly prevalent within foothill neighborhoods. And then as you're traversing Hogue Road, it does, come onto a significant slope.
So if this, I don't know if this is for you, but if it's not, we can go to the applicant. If this site if we were to approve were to be developed, what would the slopes look like? What would those cuts and fills look like? Can you guess or?
So that's something we would see at time of development, depending on what they're proposing. So that's what's difficult with this process is we just don't know what that looks like yet. So once they come in for a tentative map or a parcel map, they'll have to do more engineering studies to see kind of where they could actually place any development. So at this time, we don't know what that would look like. And I can defer to them on what the current slopes of that lot look like if they have that.
Chair, can I ask a question to the applicant, or am I all out of questions, or am I good to keep going?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question for the applicant. So I understand you guys want to move forward. What would you, and this may be a little early in this discussion, but would you all be open to having more conversations with the neighbors and do you have any information on what this site would look like, or is it still way too early in the game? Because I'm curious about the cuts and fills, because I don't know if you've sat in on these meetings, I pay a lot of attention to that type of stuff. And I'd be curious to know, before we even get to that step, what some of these cuts and fills, and plus we are in the foothill neighborhoods, which does encourage cluster development to preserve some of the nature areas, but cuts and fills are an issue, drainage, things like that. Would you be open to having those conversations and postponing?
I just want to be really cautious on the way these are answered, because I don't necessarily think the applicant is able to present us a proposal for the development.
Well, I'm asking him if he is. Are you or you're not? I don't know what stage you guys are in with regard to this development.
Are we willing to
share potential and what you all anticipate to be development for this plot?
So once we understand, we're going to have to look at a lot of that stuff, because this isn't completely flat, right? So getting the minimum acreage, or the minimum 1,500 square foot lot, is not realistic here, because we will have to take into account for things like that. And so we will have those conversations with the city. We have to go through with the city, and they are going to be looking at all those stuff once we get there. But at this time, you don't know. We don't know. No.
Thank you.
Jason, actually, you can make a comment on this.
Jason Garcia Lebu, planning manager, for the record. I just want to bring a little clarity and follow up to the comments that the agent and applicant just said. In this circumstance, this item before you is a master plan and zoning amendment proposal. And future items such as grading and potential project subdivision would have to go and be in accordance with Reno Municipal Code. And if it falls outside of certain parameters, it would trigger site plan review or tentative parcel map, and that would come back to this commission. So I just wanted to bring clarity for that.
Yes, I understand. I thank you for that. I understand that. I ask my questions for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Armstrong was first, I believe. Commissioner Gower's on deck.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually for Grace McKeaton. I have a couple. And if I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, just let me know. My questions are related to traffic access and public safety. So I'll start with public safety. It cites in the report that City of Reno Fire Department weighed in. What about Reno Police Department?
So Reno Police Department does get these projects. We did not receive comments from police. So currently it's outside of city limits. It's adjacent to city limits. So Reno PD would serve the properties to the east, and Washoe County Sheriff would serve the properties to the west at time of annexation. So that is kind of an annexation question. That would transition to Reno PD. And they do receive these projects, so they have noticed that would be in the works.
Okay, and at that time, they would be able to provide an estimate of response times and other issues related to public safety?
Correct.
Okay. And related to traffic access, most of the concerns I've heard are really around traffic access. I know that we'll have to go through a process to kind of outline how that will work, but the report says that impact from trips would be nominal. Is that based on a traffic study? Have we gotten to that point yet, or is it just intuitive?
So because of the amount, the potential development for this site, it doesn't warrant a traffic study. I think the impacts to the roadway, it's a unique area for sure. And so with development, we would require them to come into city standards. So currently, since it's outside of city limits, we can't put any of those requirements upon them, if that makes sense. So once they come in and say we want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 lots, we can take a look at that, take a look at the grade of the road, and at least, have them pave the road to make it more in compliance and safer. But at this moment, we don't have that ability.
Okay, thank you.
Could we ask what is the grade of the road?
Sorry, this is not a time for the public to speak. We're going to deliberate and ask questions as we see fit to help make our findings. Thank you. Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Grace, can we just walk through the access in a little bit more detail and the potential requirements for roadway upgrade? So when you say they would be required to upgrade the road, to what extent, how far down the road? And I just want to make sure that I'm in line with my questions. I'm looking at finding H under the zoning regulations, which relates to timely and orderly, efficient arrangement of transportation and public facilities and services. So I feel like I'm in line diving into this in a little bit more detail.
Sure. So as I said, it is a unique area. Most of these sites are served via private access easements. Some of them are formalized and some of them are not. And so this access, you can kind of see that dashed blue line jag upwards a little bit to the right of your screen. And you can see that gray line, which is Hogue Road. It goes on to Forest Service land to the south. There is a process to get a formal easement from the Forest Service to expand that easement. I believe it, it would take some time, so that would be something we would require of the applicant prior to development. Currently, they get access, it jogs down Hogue Road. It goes, I'll follow with this mouse. It goes down this way, and so this is kind of where you see the slope start. It goes down here, and then they get access around into here. There's a couple options where they could get access for the future, and they would have to propose that at the time that they chose to develop.
Okay, so that's informative. So the city's jurisdiction right now for maintaining Hogue Road ends at that blue jog right there?
Correct. So this is an estimation, but the paving
It sort of
kind of
fizzles
stops
out
right here.
there. Yeah.
And then it does go to, it looks like kind of half street improvements. And so if you remember, that used to be our standard when you develop. So I did some research. It looks like at about the time, these half street improvements were done, there was probably some development occurring. So we didn't get those full street improvements. So we see it kind of fizzle out around here. Now we have full street improvement requirements. So that would be kind of rectified.
So based on what we know at the city, who's responsible for maintaining the road past that point?
Correct. So this is,
Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I'm getting a little frustrated with the audience. I'm trying to get answers to these questions so we can make an informed decision here.
this is where it gets a little complex. Some of these agreements have been formalized and some of them have not. So some of them are assumed, and there should be an agreement recorded against these properties for ownership and maintenance responsibilities. If they're being maintained, it's not really the city's responsibility to look in on those easements and see if they're performing their duties correctly. But if they were to transition, we would require those agreements to be formalized and to have clear maintenance responsibilities laid out.
So under a situation where the city extends its maintenance agreement, whatever that agreement looks like, if it continues westward to that intersection of the driveway, from that driveway, what would the city standards be? Because you've got essentially a shared driveway that would access a minimum of 4 parcels, but if we add more into the proposed zone change parcel there, it could be a split driveway for like 11 different parcels. Does the city have a standard for maximum amount using a shared driveway?
Yes, it's a little vague in code. You can't see it. There is actually a portion of right-of-way. So this is all private. This is Forest Service. Right up here, there is a little sliver of dedicated roadway. I'm not sure exactly when that occurred. Through some research, it looks like that's probably when those improvements were completed. They could potentially go north. I guess all I'm saying is, no, I don't think we would require or consider it a shared driveway. We could consider it a private access easement, but it does depend on how many units that is serving. And Mike Michelle might be able to speak to the threshold to which we would kind of change the way we look at that. And even shared driveways are required to be paved. So it would be improved kind of however we looked at that.
And those are all the things that I feel like we need to have some answers to, because it has implications not only for this property, but it has implications for the surrounding property owners of what they're going to be either expected to do or be experiencing as a result of this zone change and the annexation, which is another issue that I don't want to get into. But unfortunately, the Planning Commission doesn't have any sort of purview over the annexation piece of it. So yeah, if Mike has anything in addition to add on the access and kind of the shared driveway standards and requirements for upgrading as part of this, that would be helpful.
Good evening, Mike Michelle, engineering manager. I think it really depends on whether this is a tentative map or a parcel map. If it's a tentative map, it's more of a standard street section design, a parcel map where there's much less impact to the roadway. Maybe it's a standard less than that, but I totally agree with you. We don't know what's proposed. And you're right, there are impacts downstream to what you are deciding on tonight. And I don't have an answer for you.
Go ahead, Grace.
If I could, I will say that sometimes it's difficult when we see these zone changes or master plan amendments, we have infrastructure in place, and so it's an easier transition. For this particular one, because it's in the county and it's unincorporated, some of these agreements weren't formalized. Some of them are a little unique. The applicant hasn't invested their time to look at their specific development yet because they want to kind of, we talked about putting the cart before the horse. They want to make sure that they do these steps in the correct process. But I can tell you that the only way that these roadways get improved is through this process. And so whatever they come forward with, we have certain mitigation measures in place. And if it's a tentative map, then it comes before this body where we can look at the actual proposal. There would be that public process starting again. And so they do have some work to do to see what that looks like. But right now we need to look at, obviously you guys understand that. It's just a little bit of a unique area that we don't see it this way a lot. But it would be an improvement of what's existing.
Thank you, Grace. I appreciate the answers. Mr. Chairman, I want to reserve the rest of my comments for discussion.
Sure, thank you. Commissioner Munoz?
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz, for the record. Grace, this is going to be for you. How close is the closest cluster development from this area in the city of Reno?
I don't know the distance off the top of my head. I know that we have not cluster development, but we do have those townhomes down on Vista Rafael. I think it's phase 4, came forward before this body maybe a year ago, fairly recently. That would be something we see that use techniques that cluster development would use to preserve some of those natural slopes. I'm not sure if that answers.
It's sort of. I was kind of, that was my assumption that was going to be the closest development, or I'm going to finding M here to ensure the protection of existing neighborhoods and communities, including the protection of rural preservation neighborhoods. And by us approving this or moving this forward, there is nothing within, and I'm on a Google map here looking, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles in this area that is even close to that type of development. Or something like that. So how did the city come to be able to make that finding?
So cluster developments are not being proposed tonight. They have some significant rock outcroppings on site, which we would like to see preserved. If that was the technique utilized to preserve those outcroppings, we would look at that totally separately. So because it's the zoning that is directly to the east of them, we thought that was an appropriate transition. The annexation to the west, it would be difficult to place in a different zoning designation on this lot. So it's not technically cluster development. It would be exactly what's to the east. If they chose to come forward with that, it would be a completely separate review.
Okay, and then you had a slide up, or maybe it was the applicant, I'm not sure, but there was a slide up of a easement for the city of Reno that goes into the property, and it was, I believe, a green line that moves straight up Hogue Road into the property.
Correct. That's the applicant slide. I can talk you through it.
Okay,
though.
yeah, but my concern there was, and you brought it up and you touched on it, is the rock outcropping there. Using that and saying we want to preserve that, that's something we want for the community. At the same time, that's the easement that goes through that would have to be taken out or removed in order to have that easement there. So we had quite a few emails, and some of them touched on going through private property or the shared driveways that are there. Would that easement that the city has now on file stay, and they would use that and take out that cropping, or would they use the back property? I don't understand how that's going to work.
So hypotheticals here, obviously, but if they were to utilize that existing right-of-way and they had to take out that rock outcropping, it would more than likely trigger, and don't quote me on this, more than likely trigger a cuts and fills major site plan review just due to the level of that rock outcropping. So we could take a look at that, and it would be a public hearing. If they could, we would obviously promote that they preserve that rock outcropping or encourage that. So if they could figure out how to jog that easement north to avoid that rock outcropping, that would be discussions we would have with the applicant. And we have had with the applicant that would be our preferred route.
Okay, and then just one last one, if I could, Mr. Chair. We had several pictures of the property and the properties next to it, and it does seem like this is kind of an island out on its own. With that being said, was there any concerns of the city that this does not fit the area? Was there any concerns, or did that come up at all?
So I think specific to creating islands, I'm not sure if you're referring specifically to that finding. It is, abutting city limits, so that was how we made that finding. And then it's a difficult area, as I've said a number of times before. I think that this is close to city limits, or close to the downtown core. So it does make sense to eventually annex this into the city in staff's opinion. And I don't think that there's not an area of county land, a large area of county land close to this. It's within the sphere. It's anticipated to be annexed. And so that's kind of how we were able to make that finding.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Easy one for you, Grace. How come we're getting this before council gets annexation if they were input at the same time?
We would like to have these seen, and I think council's direction is to see these together. So we have to take this to planning commission prior to the annexation being heard so that they can be heard concurrently at city council.
Okay.
And this is dependent on the,
So I'm going to stay off that third rail that Commissioner Gower stayed off, at least until discussion. So thank you, Grace. Appreciate that.
Discussion? Commissioner Johnson?
With that lead in, I can't help myself. So here's my concern. A lot of what we are hearing tonight with respect to traffic, with respect to utilities, with respect to access, are issues that are looked at not in our findings, but in the annexation findings. These are reasons why the city would decide to accept this property. And on the surface, I look at this and I say it's immediately adjacent to city property. As Grace just said, it's relatively close compared to a lot of the other areas of sphere of influence to existing infrastructure. So on the surface, and especially looking at it from a planning standpoint, it makes sense from an annexation. In fact, when I first looked at it, that was my intent. But after digging into it and after hearing the discussions that we're having this evening, I think we are incredibly hamstrung by the process that the city has laid out willfully by not letting council or not letting this board be involved in annexations, where we have findings to make on here with respect to, master plan amendment. Plans are in place to provide public services and facilities in accordance with master plan concurrency management system. That's just a master plan amendment. General review criteria about mitigating traffic impacts, providing a safe environment. All of these things are things that have been brought up tonight that we can't respond to because we don't have the answers that I suspect will be far more fleshed out during the annexation discussion. So while I look at this and I'll back up and I say, hey, this is it's a pretty straightforward. It's a zone change, or it's a master plan amendment from what is essentially a non-conforming parcel. It would be a requirement for 5 acres. It's only 3. The applicant can't do anything under that scenario. SF3 is adjacent. You could take that. It could be 1 house. It could be 4 houses. It could be up to 9 houses. From the surface and from looking at it just in terms of what we've seen before for small developments, master plan amendments, this fits right into that category. But everything that I've been hearing tonight from the public, from the questions that have been asking here, and for our own staff's inability to actually know what's going to happen, I don't know that I can make these findings that I pointed out here, because these are things that are discussed at the annexation level, and there are discussions where council says, yes, it makes sense that we are going to have the ability to extend the roadway up there. To the questions about police and fire and their response times, we know we can look at what they are, but not in depth to the fact that they have to go up a hill in a snowstorm to access this, and is that something that we want to do? So while I can look at the general idea of this and I can look and say, hey, the maximum of 9 units being added on there, I don't really have an issue with that. But when I look at the findings that I have to make with respect to what I've heard tonight, I have some real challenges. So there's my lead in for discussion, and I will allow the rest of the, the commission to respond to that. So thank
Can I
Mr.
ask you a
Chair.
question?
Absolutely.
What is an example of a master plan amendment that improves or that mitigates traffic impacts in your mind?
So a master plan amendment does not need to be an intensification of what we've got. We've had some in the past where existing land use had the possibility of hotel casino. And so the master plan amendment and the development that we went downgraded that to a arterial commercial or a neighborhood commercial where we could look at it and say, yes, the amount of development that's there, the traffic will actually be reduced in conformance with what is there.
So down zoning would be example, but are there examples of more intense zoning that would ever lead to us to make the finding?
I think the to your point, it's hard for me to respond to that because I don't have a situation where I'm looking at an upzoning where there's a requirement to change a dirt road on Forest Service land to become the paved access. So it's not so much the intensification, it's the fact that we don't understand what would be required to meet that situation. So there is to Commissioner Gower's question about how far does the city actually go with improvements to a road, there are road improvements required in order to access this, which again is a question at annexation because it's services and utilities that the city has to extend, which is a financial burden that is not a part of our purview. So to my point, the questions that were being asked tonight with respect to what kind of improvements are being done, how are we going to access this site, all of these things, I don't have the answer to it. Staff doesn't have the answer to it. And I can't say with respect to what I've heard from traffic impacts, are we going to make the road better? Are we going to pave the road? What requirements are going to be on there? So that's why I'm looking at that as an example of a finding that we have to make based on a lack of information that we have before us with the project. Hopefully that answers your question, at least in terms of the way I'm looking at it.
It does, and I think the way I look at it differs slightly in that I don't necessarily think we can look at the amendment to the master plan mitigating traffic, but rather does the amendment lead to a process which could potentially mitigate traffic? And that's what I've heard is that the process that it would lead to is if it's greater than 5 units, then it would lead to some sort of a tentative map, which would mean it's back here and we can look at it. And if it's less than that, it goes to city staff, and I would hope that the city staff would look at it. So I look at it more like, does the process allow for mitigation of traffic impacts? And I see where you're coming from, but I guess I kind of assume that if the city's gonna agree with annexation, make those findings, that just, they either will.
And that's your point. You're making an assumption of what council's going to do that we don't know. So that's what, so if there's, we are being asked to make that assumption when it's not part of our purview. And not to get into back and forth, your point is very well taken in terms of the mitigating of the traffic impacts is based on the overall development requirements that this is going to have to do. And that is a perfectly appropriate way of looking at this. I'm just concerned that we don't have enough information to even know that, how that could occur. So.
I understand. Thank you for the
Thank you, Commissioner. No, I appreciate the discussion. So thank you.
Mr. Draculich?
I guess just to be on that train, so my understanding, I guess this may be for Jason. So rejection or approval tonight of this item, it's going up to the city and they're going to have a bigger conversation with annexation, I imagine. Okay.
Tonight's Jason Garcia-Lebu, Planning Manager for the record. Tonight's action is a recommendation to the City Council. And so that will basically be either in support or against. But the council will have this item and they will have a separate item for that annexation. And that's anticipated in December.
Okay. And I misspoke, but if there was a rejection, the applicant has the right to appeal and go to the council. And do you think they would take this item and the annexation conversation in the same moment?
So this item will still go before council. So this wouldn't really be an appealed decision at this point. It's a recommendation to the council, and the council will
carry the item with the public hearing.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For me, it's a fairly simple situation, and it just boils down to procedural. And in my opinion, the annexation decision should come before a decision that we're asked to make. And I don't think that this commission is ready, quite frankly, to vote yes or no on this. It should wait until the annexation decision. And the logic behind that, not to reiterate what Commissioner Johnson said, but just to summarize, it's a decision by the city to say, yes, we're going to commit our city resources, police, fire, transportation, all of those resources to serve this property. I have questions that relate directly to the findings for zoning regulations that I cannot make because I don't know the city's commitment to provide those services. We can assume that because it's in the sphere of influence that the city would make a decision at some point in the future to provide those services, but they haven't made the decision yet. So that's my logic of saying, if we postpone this until after December 14th or whatever that council meeting is, then we'll have the information that we need from council, who holds the pocketbook decision authority, to say, yep, we've made this commitment, okay? Then I feel comfortable about all of this other stuff will happen to serve the property. So it's just a timing thing.
Commissioner Villanueva?
I'm not, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to reiterate what Commissioner Johnson and Gower said, but I do agree with all of their statements. And then also, I'm just looking at some of the competing principles with regard to that sphere of influence for foothill neighborhoods and this particular, what an amendment would mean for this particular area. And I would want to see what, if annexation is going to happen, but from what I'm seeing as far as my competing principles that I'm considering are, for example, I think it's a good thing to have more development on those particular parcels. However, the location is what's an issue for me, and kind of the infrastructure that's there, obviously the cut and fills that we may be seeing, potential retaining walls, if that's a component. I just can't consider those things right now, and I think it is a little bit premature for us to be looking at this. And so I'm going to be a no on this, but I do appreciate everyone's time.
I guess I'll give my thoughts. I understand what y'all are saying in regards to you're not comfortable because the city hasn't committed to annexing the property. And that kind of creates, in my mind, like a legal fiction that I think I can make these findings, understanding that the city needs to annex the property and do a lot of different things, understanding that our decision doesn't have an effect unless that happens. So because of that, I'm comfortable applying these findings and making a decision based on an assumption that the city is going to act in a certain way, knowing that if the city doesn't act that way, it doesn't matter. The decision is not binding, it doesn't affect anybody. That said, I think I can look at what the purpose is or the zoning amendment and what would be allowed, and understanding that there's some limits. So there's a lot of discussion about traffic. The maximum allowed housing is 9. So we're not going to have drastic amounts of traffic. We could have up to 9 houses. And we'll have a process whereby that can be vetted. If it's greater than 5 and it goes to the city otherwise, I see that as a pretty reasonable way to see how all these findings can be made. But I hear what you're saying. It sounds like a lot of people have made up their mind. So if there's anyone that's interested in making a motion or having more discussion.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Sure.
In the case number of LDC 23-00002, 1045 Hogue Rogue Master Plan Road Zoning, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I moved to deny the amendment to the master plan by resolution and recommend the city council do not approve the master plan zoning map amendment subject to conformance reviews by the Regional Planning Commission. I
Michelle,
cannot
can we do
make
a
the
roll call,
findings.
please?
Can we get a second first?
Oh, I'm sorry, a second. Good call.
Commissioner Villanueva, I second that denial. I hope I understood what he was saying correctly, but yes, I do.
Thank you. We have a second.
Okay, so this is a motion and a second to deny.
Mr. Chairman, can we have discussion?
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not necessarily in favor of the motion as stated. I do believe that there's a third option, as I mentioned, yes, no, or postpone this decision of the Planning Commission until after the December 14th City Council meeting, at which time the City Council will have presumably made a decision on the annexation. So I just want to throw that out there, that I think there is a third option to explore.
I understand.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dragic, I would support a postponement if that were to be motioned.
Commissioner Armstrong, for the record, I would also support, I would also support postponing the decision.
Could I hear from Grace or the applicant, either if you have thoughts on this?
So we could postpone the hearing until after council hears the annexation. I don't know if we want to do date certain or if we would like to renotice the property or the project.
Sorry, I just would like some clarity on what that would mean. Would the city council's decision then be subject to planning commissions?
So this is where it gets a little, this is why we've had the direction to have the annexation and the zone change and master plan. To Mr. Chair's point, it is a recommendation. Either way, it goes to City Council. They would like to hear those as one package because otherwise it's contingent upon your guys' approval for the zoning map and master plan. That being said, the City Council would not hear the master plan amendment and zoning map amendment. They would hear the annexation alone, and then it would come back to the commission at that point. So that's kind of where staff is at when we schedule these hearings and why we do it that way based on that kind of thought process.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up with a question?
Please.
And I wasn't going to say it earlier, but this is exactly why the Planning Commission needs to review annexation decisions, because this applies directly to the decision-making process that we have to do at Planning Commission. Having said that, Grace, what difference does it make to City Council how this property is zoned or what the master plan land use designation is for an annexation decision, since we don't look at that and we don't really know?
So if I understand your question correctly, are you just saying that if the City Council looks at the annexation today, based on the zoning, that would be assumed once annexed, and then heard the zoning map amendment and master plan separately? Does that make a difference as far as timeline?
Right. I mean, the city's been annexing property for a long, long time, and I don't think we always follow this process, do we, as a city? I mean, the city annexes property with the existing master plan and land use designation and zoning designation without changing it first, often, right?
Correct.
So why does it matter that we go through this process first?
I guess the only reason it doesn't, I mean, they should be able to hear the annexation separately. And to your point, obviously, annexation, that's per code. We don't get to pick and choose who hears it. Just wanted to clarify that. But if they hear that annexation separately, it doesn't matter. We have heard direction to try to make them, concurrent so that they can look at the project more as a whole. So we see this sometimes with tentative maps in conjunction with the zoning map amendment, trying to get a better idea of the project as a whole to bring it together as one project. That's just kind of been the preference. So as of lately, we've tried to follow that process. If the applicant chooses to submit an annexation before that, then that's their choice.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Munoz?
Thank you. Just a quick question. So my understanding is if this is continued, or if these are not done contingent or together, it goes from 2 meetings to 4 meetings. It has to come to a vote 4 different times for the same thing.
Not necessarily the same thing. Annexation would be separate.
Excuse me, I apologize. I didn't mean,
That's
I
okay.
mean, the 2 different items come back a total of 4 times.
I believe your math is correct.
So it makes more sense to, and I understand why they do it this way. It does hamstring us, but at the same time, it does knock out 2 different meetings that they have to add to it. So it makes sense when it doesn't make sense at all. So it is frustrating, I get it, and I believe that's why they get the yay or nay vote, we send it up, and then they make the final decision on it. So that's just how I feel about it, but I agree with everybody up here, this is very frustrating, so.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to follow up now. So as I understand it, Commissioner Munoz, sorry, you've made the motion to deny, with the idea being that we are sending a recommendation that we don't approve it. That's your motion moving forward, and the main reason being the discussion that we've had this evening. So I guess as a matter of maybe context with the motion, if there could be maybe some specifics, and I'm saying this mainly for staff and legal and everything else, as to, obviously there's the record of the discussion that we've had this evening, but I think, we need to be very clear in terms of the recommendation. If we're not recommending it, I think to Commissioner Gower's point and to a lot of them here, it's not necessarily on the merits of what we're seeing, it's on the lack of information that we have that's in their court. So I guess my recommendation from a clarification for voting is if we could maybe clarify that with the way that we're approaching this, to your point, to save having to do extra meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any interest in the continuance motion? I know that was discussed. I understand there's a motion on the table. I'm only bringing this up.
Chair, I think that's what Grace was mentioning earlier. That is, if we continue, then there's that extra meeting, right? And then council won't have what they need in front of them?
Excuse me, if I could jump in here real quick. So pursuant to our code, 18.08401, if you look at A, applications for annexation shall be reviewed by City Council concurrently with the application for a zoning map amendment or master plan amendment. So code requires that you make a recommendation tonight. And, I understand your concerns, and I think that was part of the motion that was recommended by Commissioner Johnson. But that's why we're going down this process, is code requires it.
Does that have any effect on?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Draculich, yeah, that does have an effect. I won't be supporting the denial and would be supporting the recommendation just for the note and discussion.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think we should send this to council, assuming that they're going to act in a certain way, and if they don't act that way, and our vote no longer has effect, but I think I can make all the findings given what we've seen.
Is that a motion or?
No, I think we still have a motion pending, so unless the motion is withdrawn, we'll move on to vote on the motion.
So just to be clear, we do have a pending motion with a second, and a yes on the pending motion will be a recommendation for denial to the city.
Yes.
Okay.
You want to do a roll call vote now?
Please.
Alex Felto,
No.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Katie Draculich,
No.
Peter Gower,
Yes.
Arthur Munoz,
Yes.
Sylvia Villanueva,
Yes.
Harris Armstrong.
No.
So the vote is 4-3. Carl? The vote is 4-3. It's 5 for a master plan amendment. So does the motion carry?
What was a no vote?
I understood the motion was to deny the master plan amendment. So if you don't have 5
And the
votes for the
zoning.
master plan amendment, that vote dies.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. For those that are in attendance at
No,
this
we
meeting.
need to vote again. The motion to deny failed.
Yeah, can we just clarify? Let's clarify what the motion was and then clarify what the vote is so that we have a clear record.
The vote was 4-3 in favor of denial.
Okay, so the master plan amendment fails. And then let's go ahead and have a separate vote then on the zone change. And we have a clear record.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, the original motion, as I understood it from Commissioner Munoz, was for the master plan and the zone change. So I was voting on the master plan and the zone change. Can I request that we have two separate motions, one for the master plan and one for the zone change, please?
And with that, will you be making a motion?
Well, Commissioner Munoz was the original mover, so I would defer to him.
Okay.
So if I can change my motion to just the master plan, a denial on the master plan.
Okay.
Commissioner Villanueva, so I second that motion to deny approving the master plan.
Okay, and just to clarify, that the motion is to deny the amendment to the master plan by resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Michelle, will you do a roll call?
Roll call. Okay. Alex Velto,
No.
Harris Armstrong,
No.
Peter Gower,
Yes, and just to note that specifically, I cannot make finding C, primarily finding C for a master plan amendment. I cannot make that finding.
Mark Johnson,
Yes, and it's the same finding that I can't make that I mentioned earlier. Finding C.
Arthur Munoz,
Yes.
Sylvia Villanueva.
Yes.
So again, we have 4-3 to deny the master plan
You never
amendment.
took my vote for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, but I'm a
Draculich.
no.
Okay. Sorry. What were you a no?
Most important vote, JD, don't worry.
He's a
Okay.
no.
Okay, I'll now entertain a motion to deny recommendation. Recommend that the city deny the approval of the master plan and zoning map amendments. I'm sorry, the zoning map amendments.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear.
So a recommendation that the city council deny zoning map amendments.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
In the case of LDC 23-00002, 1045 Hogue Road Master Plan, zoning map amendments. Based on compliance with applicable findings, I move to deny the zoning map amendments subject to conformance review by the Regional Planning Commission.
Commissioner Villanueva, I second that.
Does that motion work?
Yeah, so I think the motion was to deny the amendment to the master plan, and you were unable to make the findings. Is that what the motion was? I mean, the zoning map
The
amendment?
zoning map amendments.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like Grace is going to save the day.
So the
zoning map amendment.
The zoning map, the master plan
The amendment to the zoning
amendment.
map amendment, you move to deny based upon your inability to make the findings.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you, Carl. We have a motion and a second.
Commissioner Villanueva, I second.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote.
Velto,
No.
Villanueva,
Yes.
Draculich,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Armstrong,
No.
Munoz,
Yes.
Gower.
Yes, and specifically, I cannot make findings H, J, and M for the zoning map amendment.
Okay, so the motion is 4-3 to deny recommend denial of the zoning map amendment. Carl, I'm still confused on the master plan amendment. It was 4-3. So is that if we do another motion,
That doesn't change.
It ends up as a
the zoning
technical
map
denial.
amendment dies. So to approve it, you need 5. We didn't get that, so it died anyway.
Okay. Great, well, thank you. We'll take a break now. We'll reconvene at 8:05. Okay, thanks so much. We're going to come back to order.
All right.
We're now going to move to agenda item number 4.4, which is case number LDC 22-00050. Do we have a presentation, Garrett?
All right, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Garrett Gordon, tonight representing the applicant on an amendment to an existing PUD. And that amendment is pretty straightforward. It would allow an additional use of multifamily within that PUD, and not an unlimited amount of units, but it would cap the amount of units at 96. Project location is in the Virginia Lake area, bordered by Mountain View to the north, and then to the south has access off Beck. It's approximately 5 acres. Currently, it's vacant, although if you've been around the site lately, you'll see a lot of activity because the city of Reno is staging equipment on their land while they do some needed infrastructure improvements and work in the area. There's a second visual from Beck. So there's probably 3 or 4 slides that are critical tonight to this discussion and for you to make the findings. And this is the first one, the zoning. Currently, we're a PUD, and we're asking to go multifamily 96 units. Originally, the concept was to go to 123 units, but 123 would have exceeded the surrounding MF30 zoning. So what we wanted to do, as far as a finding of compatibility, was to ensure that the number of units we're proposing tonight were under the MF30 that you can see surrounds this property, but for the SF5 that's on Mountain View, and of course, the public facility zoning, which is the dog park. The current PUD provisions were originally approved in 2011. The first phase, multifamily, which is south of the proposed area tonight. Phase 1 is complete, 44 affordable housing units. Very great project, much needed in this community. The northern portion of the PUD currently allows for memory care along with some cottages, or memory care along with assisted living. Those uses are staying. We're not asking to delete them. We're just asking to add the option of 96 multifamily units. What are we doing tonight? Updating of the allowed uses to allow 96 units within this PUD. Updating the tables to provide for that, some phasing updates, and then the great thing about handbooks, as all of you know, is we can put conditions and design standards. So we have development standards, including building heights. I'll talk a little bit about that, which we made some adjustments based on neighborhood input. Setbacks, retaining walls, landscaping, and updates to the architectural character and style. Finally, the last point, 2 access points we thought were very important. One off Mountain View, and another, a big chunk of our buildings are down south on the project by Beck. So you'll hear tonight from our traffic engineer, we're gonna spread out those trips, so half of them approximately go down Beck and half go down Mountain View, which is why you'll see there are no objective traffic concerns by our team. Community input. Several meetings with concerns neighbors were held prior to designing the site. You'll read in the staff report, we've already had 2 NABs and also a voluntary neighborhood meeting at Moana to solicit input, and you'll see tonight the changes we've made in response to that input. I also met with some council members on the site. You'll be happy to know we're saving 3 or 4 additional trees than we were in the beginning. A couple ward meetings, neighborhood meetings, so I would say a lot of public input on our revised plan. The issues raised, there are 3 of them that I'd like to focus on tonight. Parking, traffic, and design considerations. The multifamily option, 96 units, 1 and 2 bedrooms, consistent, of course, with the adjoining and surrounding multifamily uses. It provides much needed attainable housing options. Last month, the Reno Gazette-Journal said that actually vacancies are going down and rents are going down, and why? Because all of you have been approving very smart, sustainable multifamily projects, and it's working. They're getting built. Rents are coming down, vacancies are going down. This 96 units will certainly contribute to those efforts. Infill. You'll read your master plan. Infill, infill, infill. This is a perfect infill project for 96 units, which of course is under the MF30 zoning. Development standards include design provisions to ensure that the project properly relates to adjoining properties. I'll show you a set plan in a minute. This is also important as far as parking, because I know the concerns for the neighbors were, are you going to park on our streets? Will there be too much off-site parking? We've all who've lived here for all of our lives or most of our lives know that going around Virginia Street, beautiful, but you want to avoid parking into the neighborhoods. So you'll know and you'll see that our parking standards exceed the city standards, the APA standards, the ITE standards, and the ULI parking standards. All of our demand estimates, not only do we meet, but we far exceed. So we're confident that there'll be no spillover parking into the neighborhoods. So here's the site plan to orient you. Top of the page is Mountain View. South is Beck Street. You have the dog park to the east, and then, of course, multifamily to the west. So Reno code requires 96 parking spaces, 1 per unit. We are proposing, initially proposed 96, then we proposed 136, and now we're at 147 because we want to make sure that there's 1 space per bedroom. Again, 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, code says 1 parking space, but we're trying to exceed that to make sure there's no spillover into the neighborhood. So we're going to have 138 spaces for counting bedrooms, and then 9 additional spaces for neighborhood or for guests. So that would be approximately 1.5 times more than that's required. So that's kind of the first bucket tonight of parking, traffic design, parking. We far exceed code, and I think have mitigated that concern. Landscape plans will include a plan to save as many existing trees as possible. We added a walkway based on neighborhood input that would go from the clubhouse up to the playground. Bike parking areas have been added. Height reductions, I'll cover that on the next slide, which is important, along with the clubhouse elevation has also been modified. So a color rendering you can see, now the orientation has shifted a little bit. Now on the right side is Beck Street, north is to my left, Mountain View, and then the dog park is on the top of this page. So as mentioned before, we have a number of buildings south of the site where we anticipate traffic will go and exit on Beck. And then we have some buildings on the north side of the site where traffic will go out on Mountain View. As far as design standards, you can see the 2 residences up that are dashed in white. Adjacent to that first residence is the clubhouse. And why is the clubhouse there? Because it's 1 story. No real visual impact, no shading problems, no adjacency issues. You take the clubhouse, here we go. You take the clubhouse and you move westbound to these buildings. Well, we reduced the height of this building from 3-story to 2-story to make sure, again, no shading issues and making sure that it's a stepped back approach, as well as the comments we got from the neighbors related to the dog park and wanted to be absolutely certain that there was no unnecessary shading of the dog park by our buildings. So you can see this building here is now a 2-story, and this building here is now a 2-story. So as I mentioned in hearing from the public about design, we have modified the heights of the buildings so there's no impact to the dog park. The clubhouse is located next to residential. We have another 2-story building here. We're splitting the trips back and forth, and we're clearly over parked. Public transit. Your master plan references not only infill, but putting multifamily by public transit. Here you have bus line number 6, the Arlington Moana is a block away. And really not only a block away, but 1,000 feet away for a bus stop. A perfect place for a multifamily project, not in my opinion, but based on your city master plan. As I mentioned earlier, there's a few critical slides. The zoning one, I think, tells a good story about the compatibility of the MF30. Here's traffic. One of the concerns we got from the neighbors is do an updated traffic study. So we did. This is level of service. And I can say, I've been before this commission many times, and usually we're talking about a decrease to level of service, right? Acceptable level of service is a D, So many times I'm before you saying, well, we're a B, but we're only going to a C, which is still acceptable. Or we're a C and we're going to a D, which sounds really bad, but that's acceptable. I don't think I've ever stood before you, or it's been a long time, where we're starting as an A with 1B, again, an A. With this project, existing plus project, no change whatsoever. A. No traffic problems, no traffic impact. Traffic is objective. That's why your city staff recommended approval. That's why our traffic engineer is here tonight to answer any questions. But you can see here, based on 96 units, there is no level of service issue whatsoever. It remains an A. And also, the scope of these intersections, again, were provided us to by the city. So we didn't just go study whatever intersections we want and have a baked traffic study. We were asked to study these intersections. We did, and it's all A's and 1B, so no change whatsoever. Pedestrian circulation, very important in this area. Sidewalk access to RTC routes, yes. You'll see on the next slide, we have 2 new locations for crosswalks and flashers, which I think is important, and frankly surprised those aren't already installed. Bicycle parking access, circulation, providing internally. Surrounding neighborhood is highly walkable, and new improvements will further enhance that. So here's the site. Again, I'm kind of shocked that these improvements are not already here. We're gonna add a crosswalk with flashers here on the corner of Mountain View and Lakeside. And then also right here on Audubon and Mountain View, again, some additional pedestrian walkway and flashers. Not only helps our project, but I think helps this Virginia Lake recreational area altogether. It makes the whole area better, frankly. Architectural concepts, you can see, flat roofs, a nice modern look. I think it would be very attractive to the area. So amendment considerations. We got the question of, well, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you adding this additional use? Why are you going from assisted living and memory care to apartments? Well, one, demand for assisted living has plummeted since the pandemic. And why is that? Because number one, a lot of bad things as far as people getting sick, passing away, insurance requirements, litigation. The business of assisted living right now is tough, which is why occupancies are plummeting and are now sub 80% across the country. So there's not really a market for it anymore. And in Reno, we have a lot of it. This body has approved a lot of these type facilities. Ranchera just opened one up, which is close by. The PUD was also adopted prior to the current housing crisis within the city of Reno. A detailed traffic impact analysis was completed. All intersection and roadways function above standards. Infill. And finally, a PUD ensures a site-sensitive approach. I'm going to end with, and Michelle, if we could go to the overhead here. But this site is master planned multifamily neighborhood. It's master planned multifamily. So I'm not asking tonight for a change to the master plan. I'm not asking tonight for a change to the zoning. I'm simply asking that we bring a multifamily project, only 96 units, into a site which, look, is multifamily master planned, surrounding multifamily, consistent with and compatible with the MF30. Your city, the staff did a great job outlining some policies in your master plan about housing options. Yes, check that box. Geographic diversity, innovative design. I think we were innovative because there's a dog park next door. We wanted to make sure there was no shadowing of the dog park, so we designed it where the buildings were stepped up. We put the clubhouse next to the single family. We split the buildings up to split traffic and trips north and south. So innovative design is definitely appropriate. Infill and redevelopment. Of course, this is an infill site, which is master planned for multifamily. And then there's an area-specific policy in here that says mix of housing types. So you see here, multifamily apartments. You see north of us, single family. Great. You see on the other side of Virginia Lake, townhomes. Great. This area is not only master planned, but there's a specific site policies that says this diversity of housing, this mix of housing is exactly what Reimagine Reno and the City Council approved. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. We do obviously agree with staff's recommendation of approval. I'm here for questions. Lisa Nash from Christie Corporation, the planner, is here for questions. And Lauren Chilson from Headway Transportation is also here for questions. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a presentation, Grace.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Grace Macadin, Associate Planner again for the record, here to discuss the Sierra Senior Care PUD amendment. So the subject site is directly south of Mountain View Drive, southwest of Virginia Lake, and east of Washoe Golf Course. So taking a closer look at the site where you can see the existing dog park is discussed to the east of the site. You can also kind of see in this view the 44-unit affordable apartments on the south end of the site, and those are part of this PUD. They were constructed in June of 2017. So the request before you tonight is an amendment to the existing Sierra Senior Care PUD handbook. This amendment would allow for a 96-unit multifamily residential development, the northern portion of the site with associated design and development standards. So surrounding the site consists of multifamily to the south, single family to the north, and the northern portion of this PUD makes up about 3.26 acres. If this amendment was to be approved, it would allow for a density of approximately 29 units per acre, which is consistent with the MF30 surrounding the site. So this handbook has been through a number of amendments. I'm not sure if some of you guys sat on this body for some of them, and it becomes a little confusing. The PUD originally proposed 3 phases. The first phase was that multifamily 44 units affordable housing, and that was done. First phase is complete. Phase 2 was proposed to be a 48-bed memory care facility on the northern portion of the site. And phase 3 was proposed to be 12 independent living cottages. Since then, the developer or the owner has proposed alternatives for phase 2 and 3 since they have not yet been built out. The first alternative that was proposed before was a 32-bed memory care and an 82-bed living facility. So this would, in a sense, take the place of the phase 2 and 3. The amendment proposed today is to propose a second alternative. So this would be a 96-unit multifamily development. So just to be clear, only one of these alternatives could be constructed on that northern portion of the site. So for the northern portion of that PUD, we would allow 3 development options. Only one of them could be developed. This proposal would allow for option 3 to be included in the handbook. So here's a site plan we've seen before. Mountain View Drive is on the left hand of the screen, and that's the northern portion of the site. We rotated it to increase the size of the site. So a few things worth noting here is that the applicant changed based on feedback from the neighborhood. They originally, like Garrett had said, had 137 parking spaces for 96 units. This is still above code, what code requires. And then they kind of changed the height and orientation of the building to have less of an impact on some of those adjacent uses. So here's a visual of kind of what would be proposed with these particular buildings. I think Garrett also gave an image to see for the clubhouse and maybe some other visuals. For a PUD amendment, we will use the findings of a zoning map amendment. So here's the findings for a zoning map amendment. Here is the PUD findings that are specific for a PUD. And here is the recommended motion. Staff believes all findings could be met and recommends approval of the requested PUD amendment. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you. I'll come back to the commission for disclosures. Commissioner Gower.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I met with the applicant's representative, received and read emails, and have visited the site.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the site. I read and received emails, and I spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Armstrong, I met with the applicant's representative. I read and received emails, and I am very familiar with the site because I live in Virginia Lake.
Commissioner Dracula, same disclosures.
Commissioner Villanueva, I don't live far from this area. That's the only disclosure.
Commissioner Johnson, I live within the noticing range of this project, so I received the little yellow card, and I'm obviously familiar with the site, received and read numerous emails, and met with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Velto visited the site, received and read emails, and met with the applicant's representative. We'll now open up public comments. I have some request to speak forms. Is there anything else, Michelle?
We did receive correspondence that was forwarded to the Planning Commission and has been entered into the record. We did receive voicemails. Do you want to play those first, or do you want to take public comment first?
Let's do voicemails first.
Okay.
First.
Hello, my name is Russell Gordon. I'm calling about the LDC 2200050, a Sierra Senior Care Center on Mountain View Drive, 89509. I'm on the, I own a house on 102 Mountain View. It will be directly behind my house, and I'm just trying to let you know that I'm very disappointed that Reno could think about having such a large facility for such a small road on Mountain View. There's going to be so much traffic. There's already enough traffic with the dog park, Virginia Lake Park, and all associated with that area. Adding 600 units or 600 cars per day on that street is just another ridiculous situation. There's other land around Reno, or cut the size of the senior care facility. I'm a senior myself, and I agree about senior care, but that many units and 3 stories behind my house is unacceptable to me. So I would like to just voice my opinion again. I don't think that's a good idea for my property value and also for my nerves and just dealing with extra vehicles on Mountain View Drive. That's so thank you. I hope you get my message. Russell Horton and 102 Mountain View, Reno, Nevada 89502. Thanks, 89509. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, my name is William Scott Kellison. I live at 201 Mountain View Drive. I wish to speak during the September 17th meeting at 6 o'clock, Reno City Council, about the LCD 22-00050 amendment. Please leave an email me so I can join it for Zoom and be scheduled to talk. Thank you very much for your time and hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Michael Coffey. I live at 104 Mountain View Drive, right here in near the lake. The property LDC 22-00050, Sierra Senior Care PUD amendment has been up for tonight at 6 o'clock. I think it's insane that they try to put that many apartments in that smaller space on these tiny little roads around this park, and it's going to make it a hazard for the people that bring their children to the park, for the people that bring their dogs to the dog park, and for those of us that like to walk the lake. It's going to turn this into a traffic nightmare. I can't imagine how you can possibly think that you can stuff that many apartments to that little space with these small roads and make it work for the people. This sounds like a profit scam by these companies that are the apartment complexes. This is not the place for a huge apartment complex. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, my name is Matthew Chisholm. I'm calling on project LDC 22-00050, Sierra Senior Care PUD amendment. And I'd like to add a comment for tonight's meeting. Full disclosure, I'm a homeowner living on Mountain View Drive and will be directly affected by this proposed development. My first concern is related to the reappropriation of the PUD, which is intended to provide a use for this property as a senior care center. The proposed amendment reappropriates more than 2/3 of the available land to a different use without addressing the actual PUD zoning designation. Where is the senior care center plan? Is this an attempt to ignore the PUD's designation on this property and build market rate rental housing instead? My second concern is related to infrastructure, car traffic, land usage, and site safety. The proposed impact studies seem concerned only with the design guidelines, massing, rentable unit size, etc. To my knowledge, there's been no comprehensive traffic study conducted on this site or this neighborhood. The proposed street, Mountain View Drive, is in the process of being narrowed by the Watt Neighborhood Improvement Project. Thank you for the sidewalk. The indication that the daily commute of 96 car-centric units added to the street seems seriously misguided, especially given the current traffic infrastructure in place. Add to this equation Virginia Lake Park. There seemed to be no consideration of the impact this project will have on the pedestrian users of the dog park, kids' play area, picnic gazebo, or lake trail. If the units are intended to be transit supported, what potential changes will be made to public transit or bike infrastructure to support this? Will the site have access to Beck Street as an exit? The architectural task of cramming 96 units on a 3.26 acre land parcel while supporting required fire truck circulation and turnarounds in a single entrance lot should be supported by evidence. My third concern relates to the impact on nearby schools. Has an impact study been conducted to show what a demographic boost might be on the local school? Granted, not every unit will have a child living in it, but it stands to reason that the demographic potentially renting these units will include young families with school-age children. As it stands, the zoned Anderson Elementary School is running out of space for more on-site modular units. Are there plans in the works to bolster school capacity? My final concern relates to the communication and hasty conclusions made in relation to this development. As a resident that will be directly impacted by this project, I have not been directly informed by the city or developer when public meetings or open comment periods are available. I've had to find out all my information from neighbors that are more savvy to how information is disseminated. I'm a relatively new Reno resident, 2 years and counting, but I'm dismayed by the seemingly predetermined status of this project and what it seems to say. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Marissa McClish, M-A-R-I-S-S-A, M-C-C-L-I-S-H. This is in reference to the Senior Care PUD amendment near Virginia Lake, which is reference LDC 22-00050. As a resident of the neighborhood near Virginia Lake, we strongly oppose another major multiple unit housing development. There are already so many in the area that it is honestly, we've been talking to our neighbors, it's just grossly unjust. Like, we don't have a lot of land left in this area, and then to add yet another development like this in a very densely populated neighborhood with multiple housing units is just, it's not appropriate. It's not what we feel like the city should be doing. We would love you to come take a drive around our neighborhood, around the Pepper Mill, et cetera. We welcome our neighbors. We were okay with the senior living development, but this one that was put in previously, but now that's taking over everything. I don't know. I don't even know if we were okay with that one, but it was, sorry, I am rattling. I didn't write this down. I have 3 minutes. Strongly opposed. Please leave this area open. We would rather have more park space, more space for children, more outdoor space. We're just adding pavement to an urban environment that really could use some space. Thank you very much.
I'm calling to reference to, my name is Joanne Bravo, to reference LDC 22-00050, the Sierra Senior Care PUD amendment. I live at 102 Mountain View, right across the street from the park. And they're putting this complex behind me, which now they changed it, so I'm going to be blocked of sun because the building is going to be 3 stories high. I am really discouraged how this is going, and I really think the city needs to step in and stop this, because 600 cars a day coming in and out near the park, when there's kids out there playing soccer in the evening and the ball comes into my yard, even this time of the year, when it's cold out there, they're out there playing soccer. I am totally against this, and I really don't think the developers care what they do as long as they make their money. Well, you know what? We're going to fight it. And we're going to fight hard because they don't have a clue. Thank you so much. Joanne Bravo, 102 Mountain View Drive.
Yes, my name is Carmen Gage. That's G-A-G-E. I live at 2255 Sunrise Drive in Reno, and the case number that I am calling about is LDC 22-00050, and it's the Sierra Senior Care PUD amendment. And I would like to make the statement so that it can be put into the public record, please. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, I am speaking to the proposed Sierra Senior Care PUD amendment and ask that you give serious consideration to disapproval of this project. This amendment requesting approval of a 96-unit apartment complex replacing the original approved senior care facility causes all of us in the Country Club Acres neighborhood to be greatly worried of the serious, dangerous situations that can exist on Mountain View Drive and Audubon Way. The main entrance exit is on Mountain View Street, a street that is heavily used by automobiles and walkers to access Virginia Lake Park. The entrance exit is directly across from the children's playground and adjacent to the dog park. The traffic generated by this proposed project can cause situations that can endanger our neighbors and their children. The 96-unit planned development is high density and would add to the already existing density area in Reno. Add to that the fact that Anderson Elementary School is nearby and already overcrowded. The Christie Corporation Headway Transportation Study says that the projected 647 trips generated estimates are 38 a.m. peak trips and 49 p.m. peak trips. It makes no sense. When are the other 600 plus trips generated during the day? Excuse me. Please think of your children and grandchildren or other members of your family being in such situations, and what would you think about that much traffic around the park where they may be playing, walking? Your thoughtful consideration to disapproval of this proposed amendment will be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Ms. Carmen Gage at 2255 Sunrise Drive in Reno, Nevada, 89509. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alicia Powers, ALICIA The project is LDC 22-00050, also referred to as the Sierra Senior Care PUD Amendment. My comment is, the timing of this public hearing disenfranchises important stakeholders, including families and children, pedestrians to and from Virginia Lake, and folks using the dog park, as well as the children park who live in adjacent multifamily homes. The public notice bulletin posted on Mountain View Drive is inaccessible to viewing due to the construction project on Watt Avenue that's being staged off of Mountain View Drive at the PUD site. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm calling about the buildings being built on Mountain View Drive in Ward 1. I just wanted to say that I disapprove of this. I've lived on Mountain View for 20 years, and you know, the streets are busy year-round anyway. I don't think we need more traffic coming to this area. You know, there's a children's park right down the street with, you know, Virginia Lake. There's a lot of wildlife. I think adding more traffic and living spaces to this area would probably be a very bad decision. So that's what I have to say. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was the last voicemail. We do have somebody on Zoom with their hand up. Would you like to take public comment from him first?
Yes, please.
Oh, and then we have somebody else on there too. William, can you hear us? Okay. Do William first. William, can you hear us? Mr. Kellison? You're on mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Would you like
Oh,
to make
thank
public
you.
comment on this item?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your time.
Okay, you have
thank
3 minutes to do so. Please state your name for the record and begin
My
speaking.
name is William Kellison. I live at 201 Mountain View Drive. I'm right across the street from the planned development. I urge you to vote this down. This issue has come before the council, Reno City Council, several times. They keep coming back and asking for more and more development. And it went from 36 to 48. Well, heck, why 48? Let's go to 96. And they keep wanting to add more and more people. What the folks are terrified is that if you allow them to do this with just putting in two little sparkly lights and little trees, that our property values will get killed and that you'll bring the hood to the neighborhood in the park. We have muggers and all kinds of people. We can already hear gunfire and graffiti on Robin Hood and Brinkby. Anyway, that's pretty much our concerns. Please turn this amendment down, and I appreciate your time. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, we have Curtis Whitaker next. Curtis, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you. My name is Curtis Whitaker. Good evening, Chairman. Thanks very much for taking my question. I'm sorry if I repeat something that was said in the voice messages, as I'm not able to hear them on Zoom. I just have 2 questions on available data for this amendment to the PUD. Last spring document showed that there would be an increase in the number of daily trips down Mountain View. It was estimated there would be somewhere between 600 and 700 added trips. If you think of that from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, that's about 1 car every minute going by the children's park and dog park. Is there any data on what the new number of trips would be after the developer's revision to the plan tonight? The second question I have is there any data on vacancy rates for assisted living and memory care in Reno specifically? This seems to be the main reason given why this proposed change to the PUD is needed. So I'm just wondering what the market is like exactly for assisted living and memory care now that COVID has subsided. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. We're unable to answer questions during public comment. However, I appreciate the comments you've made, and we will take them into consideration.
Great, thank you.
Is there anyone else on Zoom?
No.
Okay. We'll move on to the request to speak forms. Deborah Gamino. If you could just state your name for the record before you make your statement.
Hello, Deborah Gamino, 300 Mountain View Drive. And I would like to say this is the absolute worst place to build a huge complex like this. The main impacts would be the children's park and the whole 15-hour, mile-per-hour zone around Virginia Lake and up Mountain View Drive, as well as Audubon and, down farther on Lakeside. Also the dog park, pedestrians and bicyclists. Our area is rated very low on walkability scores. On Zillow, I can't remember, I think it's like 25 or something like that. So it's been 11 years since this started with Ken Crater, and he tried to, he tried to ram the same project through then. He was a former traffic engineer, and he did a real traffic study where they have the car counters and all that. And when those results came in, he changed his requests through a lot of meetings and neighborhood meetings. He had a lot of those, and planning commission meetings also, but he changed his request to the current PUD. And before the current PUD, this area, this almost 3.5 acres, was SF9, not SF29. Pardon me, I have to look at my notes. Everyone agreed on this PUD, including the developer, the residents of Country Club Acres and the surrounding areas, the city, the planning commission, and whoever else was involved, all agreed on this current PUD is what everyone wanted and agreed upon that would be a proper fit for our neighborhood. Also, we don't want to hear of a tragedy happening down there at the Children's Park. Last year, I was doing some video for an upcoming proposed planning commission or something, and I actually caught on my camera about a 4-year-old boy running out into the street across Mountain View, and he was almost hit by a bumper of a F-250. I could show it at some point in the future, but I would probably have to obscure the child's face. But if you want to see it, it's harrowing. Also, in my estimation, it's probably about 50 acres that Country Club sits on. I'm not exactly sure, but we have approximately 400 residences. And now it's proposed that we add 400 more, let me look, about, I'm sorry, 400 plus more people, I'm sorry, or so, I'm just estimating, on 3.26 acres, which is extremely too many. Let me hurry up. The sidewalks are nice, they're great. They'll make pedestrians safer, but they did narrow Mountain View Drive. I estimate with my measurements about 15 inches. Sorry.
Thank you for your comments. Bruce Gamino?
Can I have the overhead?
Yes.
So let me see here.
Please don't, please, yeah, we'll adjust it.
So, my name is Bruce Gamino. I live at 300 Mountain View Drive. My wife and I are professional real estate investors. We've been doing it for about 35 years. So I just wanted to point out that I'd like to thank you guys for, when there was a housing shortage, you guys took it seriously and have approved a ton of housing. You really have. So I guess what I'm trying to show with this is by Johnson Perkins Griffin. They are real estate appraisers. This is basically all the rental markets in Reno and Sparks. We have reached an apex. You guys managed to build out where rents have stopped rising. Rents have stopped rising. They're actually starting to fall. Vacancy rates are up. They're up 5 times what they were before. So there's no need to build this apartment building. Besides what's here, you guys have 5,000 apartments under construction, 2,000 at Red, which is less than half a mile away. And then I have no idea how many are in the pipeline on top of that. So you guys have really gone way past what you need to do, which is great, right? It's going to help the citizenry. Reno's growing, all that stuff. So I just want to point that out because their excuse is that, oh, we can't build memory care, right? Because of whatever's going on, COVID, right? So we need apartments. The reason they're doing apartments is because Red's getting $2,500 for the 1-bedroom apartments. This is not, if you can look at the architectural drawings, you can see that this is not a low-income apartment building. This is high scale. This is about having a place on a park, on a lake, the only public lake in Reno, right? So they can charge top dollar for apartments. It's much more profitable than memory care. The reason, but we don't need any more apartments. All we guys are building are top dollar apartments because that's the only thing that pencils out. So for them to say that this is a low income place is ridiculous. What we do need though is memory care, and we need assisted skilled nursing. We have since we've been fighting on this for over a decade. The city of Reno has grown by almost a third, right? There's over almost 600,000 people in the valley now, if you consider North Valleys and South. This is what we need, and this is what we agreed to. We're not, as the Country Club Acres and all the neighbors, we are not being NIMBY about it. We agreed to this with the developer. The developer said this was a proper use of this property, that they could support this. We all went for it. We all voted on this, right? And for them to come around and now say, oh, we'd like to change it, right? They don't care about the memory care part. They just want the apartments, right? And why should they be allowed to just willy-nilly change a decade's worth of work? We've been before the Planning Commission, I don't know how many times, the City Council, we had, I don't know how many ward meetings, how many other public meetings. They should not be allowed to change this, and I am strongly against it. And that would be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas Scholl.
Yeah, Nicholas Schul. It seems like it's a pretty obvious bait and switch. These guys came in, said we're going to put our the PUD with the elderly care and the apartments. They got their apartments in. And now they just want to try and shove some more apartments in on top of that. I think about these units. You know, they talk about 1 bedroom. It's only going to be 1 car for that. There's 2 people in there. They often will have 2 cars. There's going to overflow on all that parking. And right as they talk about that second exit going on to Beck, it goes right into a school zone, 15 miles per hour, and just not safe. You know, I'm a little concerned. I think there's definitely a need as for our elderly as they come out. If we come out of COVID, they might have gone down for those numbers, but if they will need places going forward. So I think this bait and switch is just not the right way to go, and I strongly suggest voting against it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Melinda.
Hello. I wish we had a map up there.
Could you state your name for the record,
of
please?
I'm sorry, what?
State your name for the record, please.
Melinda Gatta.
Great, thank you.
I wish you had a map to just show how congested it is right now before that is in there, before that those multifamily things are in there. And also, how about some landscaping? Why not take what we already had, the senior care center, want to stick those poor old people with no landscaping, just apartments? And I'm not one of the people that lives right on Mountain View where it's backed up next to the production, but it was nice they lowered the buildings for the dog park. How about those 2 homes, or I think it's 2 homes, that are on the west side of the dog park? They're going to be shaded. They've got beautiful properties there on Mountain View, and they're going to be shaded by these big old apartment buildings. So anyway, and also I wish we had a picture of Mountain View. It's a very skinny street, very skinny and very steep. That's where they would be exiting to get to Plymouth. And it's dangerous just to drive up it or drive down it, much less walk your dog. I don't know if they're gonna put sidewalks in on the other side or what, but if they do, they're gonna have to cut people's yards and have to do it. It's just not manageable. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Powers.
Michelle, I'll use you for a second. And I'll state my name. Just a moment. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Alicia Powers. My home sits on the corner of Mountain View and Sunrise Drive. I'm a part of the Virginia Lake community. I love our neighborhood and the vibrancy of the park. We have multi-generational families walking around the lake and children playing at the children's playground. We have folks walking their dogs who have been carefully dressed in little doggy coats. We have joggers and cyclists and folks practicing martial arts. We have folks sitting on their walkers watching all the activity. We have geese who slowly parade their goslings across the street to go from the lake to the playground and back again. All these are stakeholders of this proposal we are here to discuss tonight. I'm here to express my concerns regarding the proposed amendment to construct a 96-unit multifamily apartment complex. Objection 1, the proposed amendment request includes providing primary access of 647 average daily trips from the main entrance of the development to Mountain View Drive. This street is not adequate for increased vehicle traffic use. There is no good way to get traffic from the proposed development to arterial streets. Please refer to attachment 1, photo of Mountain View Drive. Mountain View Drive, posted 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. Proposal adds as many as 647 daily vehicle trips on a narrow lane with a blind rise through a residential neighborhood to get to Plumas. Watt Drive. In order to avoid the 15-mile-per-hour speed limit of the park, drivers will use Watt as a speedway to get to Plum. Audubon, posted 15-mile-per-hour speed limit, intended to help keep families safe, but folks speed on residential streets within their neighborhood if they're late to work or in a hurry. Lakeside, south of the park, posted 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. This area is already congested with vehicle and pedestrian traffic, including seniors walking from senior care facilities on Lakeside. Objection 2, the meeting packet for the 11/17 agenda includes a traffic report that is outdated and insufficient. The street use data reference is taken from one day in February of 2008 for adjacent streets that include Watt, Lakeside, Audubon, and Sunrise. The population of Reno has increased 39% since 2008, and the Virginia Lake Park complex attracts many more vehicle trips in spring, summer, and fall than the depth of winter. Mountain View, which would funnel the development's vehicle traffic to other streets, is a particularly narrow local street. By adding the PUD estimated use of 646 trips per day plus an estimated spring, summer, and fall daily use of 593 trips per day, you have a total of 1,238 trips per day. This is a conservative estimate and exceeds the allowed parameter for a local street. Due to inherent dangers with increased traffic next to a park in a neighborhood, please refer to traffic analysis. Can you see that? Okay. Objection 3, the proposed use change harms existing multifamily residents by adding 96 units to an already congested area. The neighborhood south of and adjacent to Virginia Lake Park has the highest multifamily density in Reno. Our neighborhood has achieved the goal of a high-density neighborhood, including single-family and multifamily residential within walking distance to a park. Please refer to attachment 3, which is a picture of multifamily density. In sum, the proposed changes endanger family, overload a high-density neighborhood, and adversely affect the ability of the greater Reno community to access the Virginia Lake Park complex. I request that you please disapprove this project.
Thank you. Michael Arrington. I might have said that last name wrong. Is there a Michael here? Oh, my apologies. Okay. I'll read this into the record then. This is a total reversal of the PUD, which was passed with the cooperation of the neighborhood. The senior care center was a compromise to reduce impacts to the senior care is growing to be in greater need as we are all growing older. The aftermath that COVID makes senior care facilities no longer viable is not believable. If the applicant cannot get financing on or insurance currently for the senior care center, which they claim is the reason to change the apartment, or they are denied the application. Thank you. Kara Van Valkenburg.
Kara Van Valkenburg. First of all, I want to talk about the timeline of this project. I think it's been frustrating, and you can see that it's been frustrating to the Virginia Lake neighborhoods. From the staff report background, this has been going on for 11 years from the first senior care PUD approval. This is at least the fourth time it has gone through for amendments in the original approved PUD. It's time-consuming for our neighbors to attend all these meetings, to become informed, to fight to protect our neighborhood, and we shouldn't have to do it repeatedly every few years. The last round, in September of 2017, the high-density apartments was presented as one of the options, and it was denied. The approved care facility was never built. The applicant argues that the demand for the care facility is no longer there due to the pandemic, but this was supposed to be built 2.5 years before the pandemic, and it wasn't. The applicant also argues that Reno is in a housing crisis and they can help with that. Reno does need more housing, but this is a project that has been denied before, and the reasons are still there. The reasons of safety, the impact on the neighborhood, all the reasons that we've heard tonight. So let's talk about Mountain View Drive. I drive or walk this route daily as part of my commute. The main entrance, as can be seen on the site plan, is Mountain View Drive. So most of the traffic is going to go that way, supposedly. One of the biggest reasons all these residents are up in arms against this project is they know Mountain View Drive. To the west towards Plumas of this project, the road is narrow, 20 feet, plus or minus, from the edge of the asphalt to the edge of the curb, and that was measured yesterday, roughly. This is much narrower than the side streets on Watt and Sunrise that it services. It cannot be even considered a 2-lane road. It also has about a 12% hill that limits the site to the west to around 120 to 150 feet for my estimation. And the steep slopes is also dangerous when you're driving up to the west when the sun is in your eyes, or when you're driving down it and it's icy because of the snow. This is not a street you put a highly dense development on. The traffic study also only looked at 2 intersections, not really the driving conditions on that street, especially when we already have to pull over when we're trying to pass each other. And also, especially on Mondays when all the garbage cans are out. Also, I would like to address some of the things that were said by the applicant. They said a 5-acre property, but it's really 3 1/4 for this phase. The multifamily 30 is around it, but that's not the reality. Most of to the east there are duplexes. To the south, it's a multifamily about 20, that's the 44 unit. And to the southwest, it's unknown. It might be at that max, but it goes on to Plumas.
Thank you. Donna Keats.
Is this using it? Hi, for the record, my name is Donna Keats. This is about the 1700th time I've been somewhere to talk about this thing. As you've been hearing, this property development has been contentious since the first rezoning proposal was denied in 2008. That was for a multifamily 21. That's when the traffic studies, et cetera, that was too dense because of the lake and the poor access. This 10-year path to this proving of the current PUD amendment was torturous. At every turn, there was intense public participation in the form of countless letters from area residents, users of Virginia Lake Park, adjacent condominium owners and residents, as well as all the NABs, Planning Commission, and City Council meetings. So one thing that was abundantly clear throughout this process was this widespread concern about the inadequacy of access to serve a high-density development at this location, and the impact on traffic and public safety. So these, as well as the usual other things, the compatibility, surrounding area, transitional density, were generally solved in 2017, and everybody thought they could take a breath. Silly us. So, since I only have 3 minutes, I picked traffic and public safety as my topic for tonight. And I have some comments about the 2022 intersection study. Now, you can sell a lot of goods about a lot of things, but I'm mainly talking about Mountain View like everybody else is, although I acknowledge that Beck Street has some special circumstances of its own. I'm not sure. Straight up, is that how this goes? Hopefully you can figure out how to read this. It's not that complicated. Whoever messes with it can put it in focus. I do data modeling for a living. My experience tells me that standard methods are not always synonymous with an accurate representation of site conditions. Pull the baseline number out of a book, there you go. May or may not relate to your site. So let's just take a little look at that. And I would say that before you accept the results of any data modeling, you should examine the input parameters and ask yourselves if the applied metric is appropriate for the specific situation that you're trying to interpret. this lists the input parameters, most notably effects of COVID, unemployment, remote work, changed work schedules. So these are the results from, all it was an intersection study. It wasn't average hourly daily counts, nothing that would give you any real information about where the other 560 cars are going to be going every day. So I looked back, there was same data, 2016, 2008. 2016 was summer, 2008 was winter. I took out the 2022 data that do not apply to where those measuring points were to normalize the data to itself, to the data collection location. That's the middle thing. Look at the bottom. 2022, total peak hour trips, 46. 2008, what? How long ago was that? 128. 2016, 137. Do you think that we have valid traffic information for this proposal right now? I don't think so. I think the background conditions are not represented, and you can't draw any conclusion about mitigating traffic impact, effect on neighborhood, public safety, or anything else.
Comments.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed that.
Gregory Gladowski.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Gladowski. I live at 2355 Audubon Way, and I strongly oppose this plan. Applicant has reiterated to you there was 3 issues: parking, traffic, and design. I agree with that, and I'll go through that. He left out a more important one: transparency. At the NAB meeting that we had, okay, we were told they were denied funding under getting memory care or assisted living facilities. We were told that, okay? And that's why they said this is why we're getting rid of assisted living. Not only is it going downhill and there's no income really coming from this, but we can get financing by putting in apartments. Well, that I disagree with completely. I don't know where they're getting the statistics from, but every day there are 10,000 people retiring. 10,000. Assisted living is going up. Someone had mentioned 2 years ago, they should have started this project. Now, I've been living here in the area since 1988. It seems like this has been going on forever. 2011, this commission, and I don't even know if anybody was on this commission in 2011, as well as the Reno City Council, specifically told the applicants when they changed and built those 44 units, they said, as to this half, do not come back to us because we are not going to change the zoning. Check it, it's in your records. They bought this property a couple years ago, knowing that this has been going on for 15 plus years. Let's go to parking. Parking, the way I look at this realistically, a studio with 30 units is going to have 1 person, 1 car. 1 bedroom is going to have 2 people with 2 cars. 42 2 bedrooms with 2 cars. Realistically, there's going to be about 162 spots. They're talking about 137. What they're not talking about is there's no spots for employees listed. There's no spots for staff listed. And there's no spots for visitors. Where are they supposed to go? Where is the overflow for this? There's homeless people sleeping in front of my driveway every night. They're on the park sleeping. There's children playing during the day. There's no room for anything. As far as designs 3 floors instead of 1 floor in the original plan. 647 daily trips versus 118 with assisted living. I just strongly deny this, and I can't believe we're all here again doing this. They knew what they bought. Do not give them the opportunity to proceed with what they're depriving the Virginia Lake area of. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else in the public like to make a public comment?
I gave her my notice.
Okay, we'll go 1, 2.
I guess. Sorry.
What's your name?
Carmen Gage.
Right here, my apologies.
Okay, that's okay. The City of Reno is obligated by statute to ensure that modification of a PUD plan does not result in changes that would adversely affect the public interest. Unique and atypical conditions in the project area include Virginia Lake Park and poor access routes. The public interest in use and enjoyment of Virginia Lake Park would be adversely affected by an MF30 development on a park boundary, particularly because primary access would be from a local street across from the children's playground and park open space. Local traffic would increase by 647 trips per day. Increased traffic will affect public safety around public facilities near Mountain View. Overflow parking would occupy spaces that are used by residents from all over the city. In addition, the proposed development is contrary to the intention of the PUD statutes with respect to planning a large area as a single entity in a comprehensive scheme, combining mixed uses, creating more usable open space, and ensuring protection of existing neighborhoods. Instead, it creates an internally inconsistent PUD. The proposed development is unrelated to the existing 2-acre PUD development to the south. It is incompatible with the Hillside Meadows project in terms of building mass, scale, density, and architectural type. So I ask you, is this still a PUD if the amendment makes it incompatible with itself? Approving this amendment under the cover of a PUD merely changes the optics of allowing a zone change that otherwise might be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, would you like to make a public comment?
Yes, Dan Beeler. I filled out a form.
Oh, great. Well, please approach us to the podium.
I'm sorry, I don't have a form from you, so if you
It should be in the inbox.
You can, maybe if you can fill out another one.
Whatever. His name is Dan Beeler. I live at 400 Country Club Drive on the corner of Sunrise and Country Club. And my biggest complaint is going to be traffic. After the condos and the townhouses were built on East Shore, you can't drive down that street no more. I mean, my God, it's nothing but car to car to car parking on the street. Same with Brinkby. I mean, it's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit through there. You don't go 30 miles an hour there. You're going to take someone's car door. And, you know, the dog park and the park, I mean, that's going to load up. It's going to load up the parking around the park. That's going to be my biggest complaint about this issue. That and Watt, now that you guys have done a real good job making it pretty, it's not got potholes no more. So as soon as that project's done, it's going to be a freeway every morning, every evening coming up Country Club. Oh, it gets rough. But they won't let me throw rocks, so I gotta wait for you guys to put a stop sign in, if you would, before someone else dies. We got a stop sign on Country Club and Watt Christmas morning a couple of years ago because of that. We tried to get you guys to give us a stop sign or speed diversions or whatever. We didn't get it until someone died. That ain't right. Anyway, sirs, that's my complaint.
Thank you.
And I found your comment card.
Would anyone else in the public like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Come back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Draculich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Draculich. Question for Grace. I guess we'll just dive right into the change from senior assisted living. You know, when it comes to the potential data, or when the staff had seen this change, do you guys have data supporting the applicant's claim that really there is a limited amount of demand for that? And did that affect you guys, or how did you go through that process?
No, really, we wouldn't look at market demand for particular senior housing. What happens is we get a request, we review it in comparison to our master plan policies and the findings that we have to make, and then we look at the surrounding, development for compatibility standards. So we wouldn't really be looking at that market demand for senior housing.
Okay, and I figured, help me out too, just because it's not in the staff report, but just southwest of us, I believe, is assisted living as well. Did you guys take that into account when, understanding that maybe we don't need that there, or what was your process when you see that?
Yeah, I believe there is senior housing fairly close to this site, and it does come into consideration in part. Really, we're looking at the proposed request and how that fits in to the particular site.
Okay, I just want to get that's part of your process. Thank you. I guess I'll just kind of stay on this train if it's okay with everybody. We'll get Garrett up here. If you want to spend some more time on the decision of not doing senior care and going to a multifamily, also there's a public comment made that maybe there was a denial of funding. If you want to just elaborate more on that decision-making process, that would help me.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Commissioner. For the record, Garrett Gordon. So just to kind of set the stage here with the timeline. So in the staff report, the most recent approval in 2017 was when my client was under contract to purchase the property. They weren't willing to close until those entitlements for an additional 32-bed memory care, 82-bed assisted living facility, or an alternative 42-bed memory care and 12 independent living cottages was approved. That in 2017 was approved, and my client, with full intention of building one of those alternatives, closed, paid the seller, and moved forward. As you heard tonight, there is no financing for the project. The pandemic severely impacted the ability to finance these projects. The idea was, what's the best next step, right? What's the best alternative? In 2017, I would question whether this planning commission would approve senior living or memory care if we were dealing with the housing shortage that we're dealing with today. That's also new information for your consideration. Is apartments needed, and is this the right location for them? So in a good faith effort, they attempted to move forward under the parameters, given they created those parameters before they closed the property. They could not move forward. So tonight, and Grace is absolutely right, they looked at the surrounding zoning, they looked at the compatibility, they did a traffic study, they looked at the master plan, and they submitted an application, which has, again, been modified many times in response to neighborhood concerns to try to find something that does fit into the neighborhood.
Yep, thank you.
Commissioner Gallup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Lauren on the traffic. I guess two questions, Lauren. The first one, so Garrett pointed out in his presentation the continuation of the LOS standard. What factors into that continuation? So why is there we're seeing a proposal for increase in trips? What is it about what you're seeing in the capacity of these roadways that maintains that LOS?
Yeah, for sure. Lauren Chilson, Headway Transportation. Everything associated with level of service is based on delay, and there's a bandwidth for those different levels of delay, right? So level of service B is 10 to 20 seconds. It's a window, it's a range. So you can have a wide variety of traffic volumes that fit within that level of service, right? And if you go to 21 seconds, you bump up to the next level. Well, the traffic volumes, in fact, are so low on these roadways and so low in the driveways that we're in the level of service A, B range. And you can add any number of trips that fit within that range and stay in that level of service, and that's the case we're in, right? We're talking about extremely low volume roads here. We truly are. If you look at them, you stand out there on the street, you count cars like we did, and we did count cars in February 22. the volumes are low, and the levels of service reflect that, and the speeds are low. There's 15-mile-an-hour zones. There's narrow streets, which now have sidewalks. I want to be very clear, Mountain View now has a brand new sidewalk on it and has been improved by the city of Reno. We're sitting on a condition where streets are really in pretty good shape. They're a calm environment, which is part of the principles of new urbanism, right? Calm driving. We're proposing rapid flashing beacons and doing a lot of good things here at the end of the day, and the conditions are fine.
So Donna Keats brought up during her presentation the comparison of the baseline situations from year to year, and I hadn't necessarily appreciated how that plays into when you use a baseline situation and how people and commuting patterns have changed. How would you respond to that, and how are you incorporating that into your traffic analysis? Kind of this no longer necessarily just a AM, PM kind of peak situation.
Sure. I mean, traffic volumes fluctuate. They simply do, right? They were higher pre-COVID, but they've come back, right? They ebb and flow. And again, we counted in February of 2022 to make sure we have most recent data, which is what we should be doing. Having said that, those fluctuations in this case mean nothing in the grand scale, right? We're talking about very low traffic volumes. So one day they're 300 on a street for an entire day. Another day they're 310. So what? The bottom line is we're accounting for those volumes. We've gotten the newest data, and the fluctuations are negligible in the grand scale of the analysis.
Do you look at trip distribution at all as part of your study? So because of the location of this project and its proximity to pedestrian cycling infrastructure, transit, that you're going to get this kind of multimodal situation. How do you factor that in?
Absolutely. We look in our analysis of how the traffic will use the various roadways that we connect to. And I want to be clear, there's a very good reason we connected to Beck. We want traffic to use Lakeside, and we believe it will. That was very intentional to not overload or cause impact on Mountain View, right? Some will use Mountain View, but we've purposely planned this site plan to disperse that traffic. We also recognize the project's going to have walking, cycling, transit trips. We didn't even take credit for those. We assigned every person trip as a vehicle trip to be conservative. So there absolutely will be those trips, and that's why we recognize, hey, in good conscience, let's put in some new crosswalks and rapid flashing beacons, right? We're interested in safety here. These are our residents. But we've accounted for those things and, in fact, been very conservative about them.
Okay. Thanks, Lauren. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is Mike still on the line? I see his face there. So, my question on the roadway of Mountain View. We've heard, we've seen, how does that street compare to, I guess, our standard street development requirements that we would be looking at in the city today?
Well, we have Mike Michelle, engineering manager for the record. Well, we have done some improvements to Mountain View. We've put some sidewalk in. As far as the width of the roadway, I'm not completely sure what the width of that is. But we've done some improvements to it.
So I believe, so the sidewalk was put in on the dog park side. There's an existing sidewalk and a red curb on the park side. So the roadway width changes past Autobahn. So I guess based on some of the concerns about traffic and parking, is if there's a red curb on one side and we've added a sidewalk, is there going to be parking allowed on both on the south side of that street still, or is that something that you're not aware of right now?
Honestly.
No parking on Mountain View. I'm asking Mike Michelle.
Mike, we
Mike,
can't
are
hear you.
there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can now.
Yeah. I'd have to look into that, to be honest with you.
Mr. Chair, I guess the only other question I have would be maybe for Grace. We had some comments, not tonight, but over Zoom, regarding the schools, and I didn't see anything about school population or counts in here. Was there information provided from the school district on anticipated counts and activities?
Yes, so the school district obviously gets all of these development projects. We did ask the developer to coordinate with Safe Routes to School as well. So there was coordination done with the school district. And I can get the specific counts for you, but I know that they reviewed them and they didn't have specific concerns.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any discussion? Commissioner Draculich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Draculich. Yeah, I guess what I see here is a shift from assisted living or senior living. Yes, there very well may be a demand for that, and I guess I don't know for sure either way. But what I do see is a trade for infill, high density apartments that could go in that we still very much need, in our community. I guess sometimes when I make my decision here, we're looking at the community as a whole, and I feel like at times, this project is something that's needed, and in support of Commissioner Munez's ward, we need these units down here. I still very much see a demand coming. We've got, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning presented to us not long ago about a population increase of about 8% over the next 8 years, and I don't know what's going to shift that, and we haven't seen anything that's going to change that. That's been presented to us, so very much still see a need for this product. I think it checks a lot of boxes for me, so I definitely be in support.
Thank you.
I'll go. I agree with the need for, not the need for infill, but it's an appropriate use of this parcel. It is infill. The parcel's currently vacant, and I don't live far from the area. I take Plumas every day to McCarran, so I pass that, past Mountain. I'm familiar with the traffic on Plumas and that traffic coming out of Mountain. So, I would ultimately be impacted as well to some degree. And I still feel that it's appropriate, especially, we're hearing a lot about there's not a lot of land in Reno, and if we want to preserve our open spaces, if we want to preserve our, public lands, then I think we need to be more thoughtful on how we're using our infill and how we're using our city lands. And I think it's, as far as the whole community, we really need to pay attention to, how we're developing so we can continue to have those public lands, can continue to have that, those open spaces. So I think this is a good use of the space. I am concerned about the safety with regard to the parking, with regard to, the increase, the LOS, but we're being told that that's fine and, we're able to sustain. So my concern there has been addressed. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, can I have, just to go back, I wasn't quite sure where this fit in, but I'm looking at the PUD text, and I apologize for not bringing this up earlier. But I'm hoping that we can make one change to a conjunction in the PUD. And that is on, I apologize for not flagging this earlier. It's on page 3 of the PUD.
Love talking conjunctions.
Okay, it's a conjunction. So page 3 of the PUD, third paragraph, it's under the project description. It's the red line text. In this instance, it says 2 alternative options to the memory care independent living cottages located on the north plus or minus 3.2 acres of the PUD are 1, a 32-bed memory care and 82-bed assisting living facility, and a 96 multi-family residential development. Can we change that "and" before the 2 to "or", please? And it's referenced that way in the rest of the PUD from what I could tell with 1 or 2, but I just want to make sure that we're consistent and there's no confusion, that we're not saying that we can do both of these options. Garrett, do you see what I'm looking at there?
For the record, we agree with that. Good
Okay.
catch.
I found another one like that. It looks like page 11 of Exhibit B. It says and as well.
Let's change that to or, and certainly on page 11 as well, and certainly we'll go through this document. I'll say on the record, the intent is it should be or throughout the handbook. So we'll work with Grace to make sure it reflects that going up to council.
Okay. And can I confirm that, Mr. Chairman, with staff as well, that Grace here, that's your consistent understanding as well?
Yes, we'll go through and make sure that they are or throughout.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for not bringing that up sooner.
No, thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's a lot of discussion, I guess, that I could have on this. These are my neighbors. I know where everybody lives here. And I understand their concerns. I don't have the history all the way back to 2011, but I do have it to 2017. I don't necessarily look at everything that I've heard tonight the same way that they do. And I think it comes from having been on this board for as long as I have and hearing the discussions that we've had. The issue that everybody's pointing to there with the traffic and the safety and everything, that is a definite concern. But I think one of the concerns that I had actually with the memory care is that the trips coming to the memory care are people who are coming from out of the area to the memory care. They're coming to visit. They don't understand what, that may be their first time there. They don't understand what Mountain View looks like. They don't understand the speed limits on Lakeside. And that was a concern to me when that came up. I voted against it for that very reason, because that traffic level and the people coming in, it is not part of the neighborhood that we're dealing with. I think to apply that same standard and just assume that when a new apartment complex is going to be there, that these people aren't going to treat those roads and that park and that circulation with the same level of care that the people who live there now do is unfortunate. I think that's part of what we're looking at here, that the changes and the circulation requirements, the idea that you go out on Tebek. I drive down Mountain View every day. I don't like driving down Mountain View for the very same reasons that you don't like driving down Mountain View, but it's the only way I can get, out of the neighborhood. If I was closer to Lakeside and took Beck, that's the way that I would go. So when I look at the traffic counts and I hear the numbers, even elevated in my head of, the number of units, doubling that, quadrupling that, and thinking about the number of cars, and thinking about these people who have kids using that same park that my daughter uses and would treat it that same way. And so I struggle with, having sat on this board and hearing about this desire to have infill close to parks, close to transit, close to all of these amenities that people are screaming for. I mean, this was our master plan, this was our zoning update. This project is every single one of those. So it is conflicting for me to have sat here for 7 years to hear what the city wants to do and have a project that checks essentially every one of those boxes. And the history of it, again, I'm not, the issue of what it was, what it would be, everything else, I can only look at what is being proposed here in the context of the findings that I have to make and the desire that the city has moving forward. So when I see what's being proposed here, I hear the concerns, I share the concerns, but those are concerns that the city is doing everything they can between the slow traffic speeds, the speed bumps, the crossing, guards, everything that is proposed in this is what we would be looking at every other infill site that we have. And so, having it in my neighborhood and knowing that I'm going to be affected by it, on the other hand, I'm looking at all of I have to step back and I'm looking at all the findings and I'm looking at what the city wants us to do. And I really struggle with finding the reasons in the findings to go against what staff is recommending. And I just have to have that discussion. I mean, again, these are my neighbors. These are the things that the issues that I share. And, hearing them and thinking about them and have been struggling with this. And I just want to get that on the record. I'm still struggling with it in terms of what to do, in terms of knowing the very specific impacts, people parking in front of my house, people parking in front of your house, people driving past my house. But again, it's one car a minute driving past my house added to what I have already. That is not a traffic impact in my mind. The parking is still a concern. I would really have appreciated staff having understanding of what parking was or was not available on Mountain View, especially in front of the dog park. If there's no parking in front of the dog park, we have an issue. So Mike, please look into that. And I'm done talking. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. That was very thoughtful. Commissioner Villanueva?
Can I make one more comment if no one else is? I just want to add to the record as well the importance of having just one more reason why it is important to have this type of housing in that area. I visited a client not far from this resident in one of the other multifamily units nearby. And the reason she was an elderly woman, the reason she lives there is because she doesn't drive and she can get access to the grocery store. She can get access to neighborhood some of her, I think, eye doctors and things like that in the community, in the neighborhood where she lives, because she doesn't drive. And she was low income. And so I hear that and I see that and I, talk to folks who need that type of access, and to deny it because of, we may have extra vehicles passing through our neighborhood. It's just not a very good reason to say, these people shouldn't be in our communities that actually need to be in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more comments or a motion? Commissioner Draculich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ready to make a motion. And do I need to include the items Commissioner Gower brought up in the motion with the or do we have that covered and on the record?
Probably include that.
Probably include it. I mean, I'm not going to be able to cite every page where it's missing.
This is a recommendation to City Council. I would just recommend that you include it in your motion for the intention to switch it to or, and then that way I have it in the record.
Okay, I'll give it a shot here. All right, in matter of case number LDC 22-00050, Sierra Senior Care PUD amendment. Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the amendments to the Sierra Senior Care Plan Unit Development Standards Handbook, in addition to staff noting the PUD handbook and adding in the verbiage or when necessary, and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and I can make all the findings.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Commissioner Villanueva, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
We have two opposed, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Munoz.
And for the record, I am actually making my nay vote because the original requirements to allow for the senior care is still an option in here. This is in addition to an option that I was not able to support previously. So my comments still stand for what's being put here, but I'm basing my no vote on the previous requirements for the senior care.
Understood. Thank you. The motion carries 5-2. Good luck with your project. Just to read into the record, there's an appeal process. Any final action not including recommendation or failure to take action.
Alex, you don't need to.
Yep.
This is a recommendation
As
of
I
the
started
council,
reading that?
but thank you for
I
trying.
realize.
Good effort.
Thank you. I was just following your directions, Michelle.
But that was the other one.
Michelle. There was for the other one. I should have read it in. Okay, we'll go to agenda item number 5, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, this ties into the next item on our agenda, but I will say that the next Truckee Meadows Regional Planning meeting is Monday because Thanksgiving is on the regularly scheduled day. There are 2 items on the agenda. Both of them are Washoe County items, one in Spanish Springs and one in Sun Valley. I looked that up before this meeting, so I sounded like I knew way more about it than I actually did. So, thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item number 6, which is the recommendation to City Council for appointment to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission from the members of Reno City Planning Commission to fill a vacant position. Everyone here is eligible, except for Commissioner Johnson and I believe Commissioner Gower. Or Gower. There you go. Okay. I've had discussions with Commissioner Villanueva. It seems like you are interested in this.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Great. In that case, I would move to nominate Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Draculich, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. I look forward to your Truckee Meadows Regional Liaison reports.
Mr. Chair, can I just state something? Just so everyone knows that we have 3 members on Truckee Meadows Regional Planning. Everyone else is an alternate, so I just wanted to make that clear.
Great, thank you. Move on to number 7, staff announcements. Jason?
Jason Garcia Lebu, Planning Manager for the record. Thank you, Commission, for hanging in there. We anticipated some complex items tonight, so appreciate the conversation, and thank you, public. So with that said, our next meeting is December 8th. That it will also be on a Thursday. So that's a little deviation from our normal Wednesday night. Right now we have 3 items anticipated on that agenda, and I will be bringing back a APA staff report training. So that's all the updates for now. Let me know if you need anything. So, thank you.
Agenda item number 8, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Okay, the agendas are perfect. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, public comment. Would anyone in the public like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Just for the record, I did not receive any public comment or voicemails for this item, and no one on Zoom has their hand raised.
Great, thank you, Michelle.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to go on the record that we do have a new planning commissioner this evening, and there is one motion left to be made, and it has to, you cannot be at your first meeting without at least one motion. So with that, what's our last agenda item?
We have adjournment.
Commissioner Armstrong, for the record, I so move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that, Commissioner.